What's up, gamers? This is Yuban with a Mechabellum Unit Technology Guide, Season 8. My tech setup philosophy has helped me achieve top 30 in World MMR ranking in almost every season, and I hope to help you win more games by sharing it. I am going to break down what technologies I equipped on every unit, the reasons behind them, and when to tech them. In addition, I'm going to talk about alternative tech setups for different playstyles. Let's start with the fundamental philosophy. In my opinion, each unit and technology combo has the potential of allowing your unit to assume and excel in one of four roles. These four roles are chaff clear, DPS, support, and one round wonder. And it is very important to design your tech bar to allow each unit to have at least two flexible roles, with some exceptions, of course. The reason for this is one, it is too expensive to triple tech or quad tech your unit. You rarely do that in your games. And number two is so you can be versatile in your gameplay. This philosophy is especially impactful on unit drop rounds as it allows you to have multiple options to counter your opponent's board. There is nothing worse than getting a high level unit drop against your opponent's Vulcan or Fire Badgers just to realize that you don't have armor on the tech bar because you are running full DPS techs. One more thing before we go into unit technology bars. My tech setup is geared towards mid-range aggro mostly. However, it does have the flexibility to play standard and defenses. If you are a strictly defense and standard player, don't worry, I'm going to showcase different tech setups for your playstyle as well. So, without further ado, let's jump into our first unit. Crawler. We run the Subterranean Blitz technology to make our crawlers harder to kill by Arclight Shockwave, Typhoons, Ground Fire, as well as the Shockwave technology, or even just regular Mustangs. So this is arguably one of the best technologies on the crawlers, as it allows these level 1 crawlers with defense enhancement to run through ground fire without dying to them right away. This is especially powerful once you have level 2, level 3 crawlers that are coming from the backline. You can start to lock up your opponent's Mustangs and even low-level Vulcans for a long time. However, one thing to keep in mind is that the damage reduction on this technology does not nullify the calling round technology's effect. So if your opponent has high-level Mustangs with calling rounds, clicking this technology is entirely useless. Just keep that in mind. We also run the loose formation technology as a one-round wonder. I say it's a one-round wonder is because once you click this tech, you effectively make your crawlers a lot weaker, a lot squishier, meaning your opponent can easily go for a Mustang counter on the following round. So usually when I click this technology, it's usually against opponent's compression hounds, regular Arclights with no shockwave, or regular Tarantulas with no HE ammo. This technology, if you have like 10 packs of crawlers on your board and you're looking to close out the game, the loose formation tech can be a phenomenal way to knock out your opponent. But just keep in mind that if you don't win the game after clicking this tech, you're going to have to look for something else to help you support your chaff, because you become really weak to fire and really, really weak to Mustangs. So never click this technology if there's the threat of ground fire or just regular fire in general. The other two techs that I don't click very often, but I have to equip, are Impact Drill and Replicate. These two are essentially your DPS slash like chaff clear technologies on your crawler, meaning that if you have a lot of crawlers that are in direct contact to your opponent's fangs or crawlers and you have some levels, clicking the replicate technology allows you to just generate more chaff and helps you chaff clear a little bit faster. And same thing with impact drill. This is the cheaper technology to counter your opponent's replicate. So this is why I always equip the impact drill on my crawlers. If our opponent chooses to go for the replicate technology, impact drill will nullify the effect of replicate for same level crawlers, meaning that you spend 100 less supplies to counter your opponent's technology. And better yet, if you double tech impact drill and replicate, you're going to win out the crawler war. And this is especially powerful if you have the underground blitz spell that's available and your opponent only has level 1 crawlers in the back. You can easily overwhelm his backline crawlers and grab a tower debuff during the battle if you go double tech or single tech. The other tech that I sometimes swap in is the aesthetic explosion. This technology turns your crawlers into this super powerful support unit that lays acid on the ground. This is especially effective if your opponent has Titan units right on the line or in the corner. And if you're playing in like a range battle or like a standard matchup, by laying down these assets, you can easily take down your opponent's heavy units. The reason why I don't run this technology is because I play aggro very often. Therefore, I find a lot of my backline crawlers as they walk through, if they die on our side of the battlefield, it actually can turn our army into very squishy army and potentially losing us the game entirely. So I recommend this technology for if you are a standard or defensive player most of the times, or if you're trying to make a build work, if you're playing only range battle, for example. And what I would do is I would probably swap out loose formation for acid, or maybe take out replicate for acid. And the last tech that I never take, which is really cheap now, is the mechanical rage technology, allowing them to attack faster and move even faster. I just find this a little too redundant with the movement speed is not nearly as good as the subterranean. And if I click subterranean, I usually don't need the additional speed of mech rage as crawlers already move so fast. So I just find this a little bit of a waste of a technology if I have to equip it. So I never use this one. Fang. I give my Fangs two roles. The support role of just being a very annoying chaff by having the portable shield technology. This essentially gives us double the amount of chaff in terms of hits, and it's especially powerful against regular tarantulas and mass hounds. I just absolutely love this, having this technology to be able to turn my apex of fangs on the board into these super annoying shielded chaff units. The second role I like my fangs to have is the carry technology. So this is sort of a combo between chaff clear and also DPS combo. But you need to have all three technologies for this to work. First, we have the range enhancement, and we have grenade launcher, and lastly, we have mech rage. In a typical Fang carry game, I will either click grenade launcher or range first as our first tech. Typically grenade launcher, because it's cheap, it gives us extra splash, and that's going to allow us to have early levels to get our Fangs kind of leveling up for the DPS later on. After the grenade launcher, I will always go for the range enhancement to allow these guys to stay back in the battle, kind of stay behind the fortress, the rhinos, the steel balls, or even the hacker barriers. By allowing these guys to stay back, we accumulate even more experiences. And then in the late game, that's when we click Mech Rage to just turbocharge our carry Fangs to victory, allowing them to move super fast, to pressure tower, and to essentially chaff clear everything on the ground. When you do go for the carry tech, especially with grenade launcher, you just have to make sure that you have your anti-air covered, especially against Wasp. This is why if you play carry Fangs with Fortress with anti-air barrage, it's a perfect combo. Match made in heaven. Another way to play carry Fang is to take out the grenade launcher and run either AP Bullet for pure DPS or Ignite for the chances of your opponent playing a Titan or heavy giant units. I would say this is more of the traditional Fang carry. Well, maybe both can be called the traditional Fang carry game, as your Fangs now no longer need high level giants to support them. Another way to play the Fang is to obviously just go for this full carry tech and forget about the portable shield. But I would say if you want to play full carry Fang, pick one of the other. Always run portable shield. Always run Mech Rage, and then have the other 3 techs as your flexible bar. I would say if you don't have Ignite on your Vulcan, then maybe you can run Ignite. But if you already have a Ignite source, or if you're confident that your playstyle allows you to get lots of levels, then you can play AP Bullet. This way you also have anti-air, as opposed to the grenade launcher. Hound. This unit is both a chaff clear unit and an excellent support unit with the technologies available. For our Hounds, we run the range enhancement tech to support the Hound's chaff clear ability to allow them to stay back and start chaff clearing sooner in the battle. However, we like to favor our Hound as a supporting role with these 3 technologies. The first one I'll highlight is the incendiary bomb, the firebomb, aka hot dogs. This allows our Hounds to chaff clear even faster by shooting out these firebombs that lay the ground on fire. This is especially powerful when you are playing a round 4 Titan setup. Say you're playing round 4 War Factory. I really enjoy having this technology on the bar, especially because I believe the Hound as a pure chaff clear with range and mech rage is quite weak in the current meta. So I typically never play Hounds unless it's because I have no choice in the starting pack and I choose it and I go for the firebomb. You just kind of go for a one tech wonder. Tech it, leave it, even if your opponent goes for any kind of anti-missile counter, I don't really mind. We're trading one tech for another tech, and the Hounds can still shoot at the crawlers and chaff clear. The other supporting tech is the fire extinguisher. This technology needs no introduction. It clears fire, acid, and smoke on the ground and has a pretty good radius. So you just need about 3 Hounds lined up to clear 120 meters worth of ground effect. And this is really good typically when your opponent also has fire Hounds, or if you know that your opponent is likely going to lay the ground on fire or spread acid on the ground against your Titan or giant units, then just having this technology on the bar is very important. I would argue that whether you play pure carry Hound technology or support Hounds like me, this technology is a must on the bar because there's no other technologies like this in the game. There's no replacement. And the last technology I run on the Hounds recently is the armor enhancement. This is sort of our one tech, one round wonder to close out the game. If we do get like triple drop of level 3 Hounds against our opponent's Fire or Mustang units, then I like to have the flexibility to click this technology and just swarm the whole board with these annoying high level armor enhanced units to tie up our opponent's units. I would say this is definitely a expensive technology, so we're definitely hoping to close out the game after we click it. Another way to play Hound is this full carry technology bar. You play range, you play chamber compression, mech rage, and maybe armor or fire extinguisher, depending on your flavor of the day. In this playstyle, you're typically either clicking range or chamber compression, and you're just going to be spreading out the whole board with Hounds. You're going to span them as your chaff clear, your DPS, and your chaff units. And later on, if you ever want to feel like you need to chaff clear a little bit faster, Mech Rage is always another good option. Even though these two technologies kinda have anti-synergy, in the later stage of the game, you might prioritize the speed and attack speed over the time to build up the attack power. Because by then you might already have like 20 packs of Hounds. So this is another popular way to play. And you can play this as a standard gameplay or aggro. So I highly recommend it if you are a Hound enjoyer. However, you know we are not. Void Eye. This is a DPS unit that also has the flexible role of becoming a support unit with its very unique technology bars. For us, we like to play a DPS carry Void Eye technology with the option of playing it as a support unit with the EMP armor. So this would be the only technology that we click as a support role, as it turns your Void Eyes into these units that you are hoping your opponent's key units will hit to disable their technologies for 30 seconds. And this is also clickable if you play carry Void Eyes. If you're spamming a bunch of Void Eyes with good technologies, as a way to close out the game, you can still click this technology, the EMP armor. However, we like to focus our Void Eyes in terms of its DPS, or just having this unit as a early game DPS slash kind of like a controlling unit. And the control comes from the suppression shots technology. It reduces your opponent's unit's range by 30%, or a pretty good while, 3.5 seconds. Meaning in the early game, round 1 to round 4, before your opponent can have the money to click range on their Tarantula or on their Sabertooth, you can easily just click this tech for 100 supplies, increasing our Void Eye's range to 110, outranging these medium-sized units, and pulling them in forward, get gunned down by the rest of your army. And oftentimes I find this is the only tech I need to click on my Void Eyes to make them effective in the early game. And then I don't feel too bad selling out of them later in the game because this technology only costs 100 and it served the purpose of achieving early game tempo. However, if I'm noticing that the Void Eyes are very effective in a setup, most likely against your opponent's mass Arclight, mass Sledgehammers, or even mass Hounds, then I'm very likely to give my Void Eyes a additional tech with a range enhancement, taking their range up to 150 meters, which is really solid. It's more than a regular marksman. This is going to allow your Void Eyes to stay back and kind of chip away at these medium-sized units. And because there's 3 packs of your Void Eyes, makes them really effective against your opponent's Hounds, which has 5 units. And lastly, the Charge Shot that's been nerfed a couple of times. Even though it only costs 100 supplies, it increases your attack by only 120%. So it's not overpowered like it used to be. But if you're in a scenario of spamming a lot of Void Eyes as your only DPS unit, then the Charge Shot could be a nice way to close out the game against your opponent's Giants and potentially even Titan units. I do have to caution you, Void Eyes, unless you have good levels, even with Charge Shot, sometimes cannot deal enough DPS against your opponent's high-level Giants, especially barrier technology. So oftentimes I find myself just going for the suppression shot and maybe even range enhancement. That's about it. If I need further DPS, I like to pivot and invest into maybe a Melter or high-level Phoenixes. Another way to play the Void Eye is to keep it as a sort of like a chaff slash medium-sized tank unit with the energy shield technology to allow them to have 2 lives and running the energy absorption, increasing their HP by a whopping 60% and converting damage dealt to HP. So oftentimes players who run Void Eyes purely for support, purely for frontline chaff, will run the EMP armor and the energy shield together to make them super annoying to deal with, and then potentially having energy absorption as a way to increase their HP, or you can run the aerial mode to make them a aerial targeted only tank slash chaff that applies EMP. This is especially powerful if your opponent has melting point against your abyss. The War Factory Master used to do this thing of aerial mode and EMP armor Void Eye to put them right in front of his opponent's abyss or melting point to disable their technologies. This can be a very effective way to play. Lastly, if you're looking to run a full carry Void Eye, like in the good old days, you just simply take out the EMP armor and run aerial mode to allow your Void Eyes to shoot everything to death. One thing you do have to keep in mind is that the range reduction of the aerial mode is no joke. It makes you really vulnerable to your opponent's Raidens in return. Arclight. This unit is a chaff flare unit by nature, but also has the potential to be turned into a DPS carry unit with the Elite Marksman and Charge Shot technologies. We typically run our Arclight. We start with the range enhancement if we are a long ways away from our opponent's units, or we'll start with the Shockwave technology if we are in a headbutt scenario. Whenever we decide to go for the Shockwave tech, or if we're just setting up to prepare to click it, we like to have 2 to 3 Arclights clumped up together, literally side by side of one another, to allow the Shockwave 75 damage to stack and to be able to erase frontline crawlers and fangs in an instant. I find if you have the Shockwave tech but your Arclights are too far away from each other, sometimes it turns out to just be a useless tech, as the only way that you're killing the packs of crawlers is with the base damage of your Arclight. With the range technology, you have to be careful about where your opponent's tank units are positioned, because sometimes if you're in a close range battle, clicking the range enhancement could lead to you chaff clearing the first wave of chaff units really quickly, but then leading you into your Arclights locking onto your opponent's tank or DPS units, which is not what we're looking to do. However, if we're in a mid-range and we're pushing into your defensive posture, or if we're in a standard matchup, this technology is almost a must-have as a first tech. If range ever becomes an issue and I need more DPS against my opponent's underground crawlers, let's say they have level 2, level 3 underground crawlers, I am incentivized to click the Elite Marksman tech to allow my Arclights to stay back, even further back, so they can stay alive for longer and deal extra damage. And by this time, if we got level 3, level 4 Arclights, even without charge shot, they're doing pretty good damage already, so this is always a nice tech to have. And lastly, we have the newly buffed charge shot, increasing attack by 300%. Get that, 300%. It makes you attack a little bit slower, but you turn your Arclights into these monstrous attack dealing units. Just crazy. And with pairing up with Elite Marksman and range, you can just have your entire board full of Arclights. And by this time, you don't even care that you're shooting slower for chaff clear, because you just have so many Arclights, potentially even with Shockwave too, that you're going to clear chaff no problem, no matter what. Another way to equip your Arclight's tech bar is to have the 100 cost armor enhancement technologies on your bar, and this allows you to utilize late game high level Arclight drop and turn these like level 3, level 4 Arclights into really tanky, annoying units that can block a lot of fire and Mustang damages. And for the cost of 100 supplies, you don't even feel bad about selling them in later on, because you have gotten your value. You're forcing your opponent to overreact to a 100 supplied technology from a unit drop. This can be a very effective way to use your Arclight as a one tech, one round wonder. Another technology on the Arclight that could be used is the anti-aircraft ammunition, allowing your Arclights to shoot up. This is especially powerful if your opponent has a lot of Wasp. You just get high-level Arclights, tons of them with Shockwave, and use the Shockwave and Arclights to take them down. Keep in mind that this technology does have a drawback, that it could lead to your Arclight locking onto air units while not chaff clearing the ground units. Let's say your opponent has Wraith or like a mothership, like an Overlord on the board. You don't want your Arclights to be locking onto them. So if you don't like that, you can also run a old school tech, the EMP shot. This was a phenomenal technology when Arclight Standard was all the rage. And this allows you to turn off your opponent's Sandworm armor, allows you to disable any opponent's units with range technology, especially if you run Elite Marksman. These three together would pretty much guarantee your Arclight can outrange every single unit that's on the ground. So even though it's expensive, it's worthwhile equipping in some scenarios, especially if you're looking to only play long range battles. Marksman. Right now, we have our Marksman tech bar equipped for pure DPS, support, and one tech wonder. So our one tech wonder is the aerial specialization, allowing our marksmen to prioritize target aerial units and deal extra damage to them. This is a phenomenal one tech that we click if our opponent is trying to push us with Wraith, or if they have some kind of Raiden in a long range battle. I really enjoy having this tech on the bar. It just allows you to utilize any kind of marksman drop, as it happens very often in the high MMR range that we get level 4, level 3 marksman drops very often in the mid to late game. And that, with this tech, can give you an instant counter to your opponent's aerial tank units. As for DPS, we run the range and double shot technology. The range allows our marksman to lock onto the key units sooner and allows your marksman to stay back and stay alive for longer, while the double shot really doesn't increase your reload time by that much, but allows you to essentially have twice as much DPS on the board. This is really effective if you are going up against medium-sized units like the Sabertooth or Scorpion. We are running the DPS tech bar along with EMP shot because we have been enjoying playing marksman as their companion to the Vulcans. And having EMP shot is especially important if you're looking to set up your board in a standard long range battle, as this allows you to turn off your opponent's melting point and or Vulcan's range technology, allowing your Vulcans to win the mirror or to win the matchup against late arriving melting points. Another way to play the marksman is to turn them into these hyper DPS carry tank chaff clear all around unit with the assault mode technology, giving them lots of HP, attack power, movement speed, and a splash to their attack, making them very powerful. And along with this technology, if you go for the shooting squad, summoning 4 fangs with every marksman, and then you equip your fangs with grenade launcher, then the shooting squad can help you chaff clear quite effectively. You might be surprised. And those fangs also act as chaff. So to play assault marksman, we like to go for the assault mode first on like round 2, round 3, and you want to start to spread out the board with marksman, putting them in the deep flank, putting them on the line to just be super annoying, making your opponent having to commit a lot into dealing with every corner, spreading out their forces. And then you go for the range enhancement tech, make your assault marksman lock onto key units faster and kind of stay back behind the chaff a little bit longer. And then for the third and fourth tech, you can decide whether you want to go shooting squad first or if you have really good level. And oftentimes, if I'm lacking DPS and lacking range, I will go for the elite marksman to close out the game. Sometimes giving these guys like 170 range, like no problem, despite having the assault mode technology. Another way to play assault marksman is to go for the quick reload. So I would say you definitely always want range and assault mode, but some people like to play quick reload and elite marksman. So skipping out on the shooting squad, essentially turning the marksman into your chaff clear unit as well, because the splash is pretty wide, and if you can attack faster and faster, then you don't really need the additional fangs to help you chaff clear. Lastly, this is my personal favorite of a hybrid marksman. We have the aerial spec as a one tech wonder, so we can just have our marksman with the aerial spec or from a unit drop. But we also have the flexibility to turn late game marksman unit drop into assault marksman, just like the Arclights, making them really tanky and hard to deal with. And with the range, assault mode, and elite marksman technologies, this still allows us to play a full-on carry assault marksman game if we can build a pretty solid chaff and chaff clear board. Vortex, aka Crabs. This unit has been controversial since the day it came out. This is a pure DPS unit that also has some one tech wonder available to it. So I'm going to showcase my current setup, which is more of a DPS carry build with the range technology, as we need to keep these guys further back behind the chaff and lock on to opponents' units earlier. And if we're looking for more DPS, or if you can link up 3 of your crabs together with the grid integration technology, then all of a sudden you increase your attack output by 105%, which is not insignificant, but it's definitely a lot weaker compared to what it used to be, which was like infinite, or like I think it capped at like 175 after the first patch. The third tech right now I'm running is electromagnetic twin. I call this mirror image, making reference to Warcraft 3 Blade Master. I don't really care for this tech too much right now, as your mirror image units just die to this disintegration tech, shockwave, fire, pretty much anything that has a splash. It can I kind of see this more as a one round, one tech wonder to close out the game if you already have the other techs set up. But I have seen other players making this very powerful, making this work. Another alternative is to run the emergency armor to allow your Vortex to kind of get anti-locked on, break the lock on from melting points, multi-melters, steel balls, and allowing them to deal more DPS while they're untargetable. So this could be another cheaper option for a third tech. And the last tech I like to run is Mobile Power Station. I actually really enjoy having this tech. This is my support and also DPS technology, as it gives us more range and it gives all the surrounding units more DPS by 30%, which is not insignificant if you're looking to buff up your Mustangs or like say Vulcan, for example. So this could be a one tech to kind of help you if you get like a triple level 2 Vortex drop in the mid game, and it's not too expensive. Another way to play the Vortex is to essentially play it as a pure support unit. So maybe we can even go like this. So we have the field maintenance tech, which was severely overpowered in the previous patch, in the previous season, when you can get like a level 4 Vortex drop in the unit drop in the mid-late game. And you just slap on this cheap technology, and you have a unkillable unit that requires a melting point or steel ball to kill. It can be really annoying. I think it still has good value in the current game state. If you get like double, triple level 2 Vortex, or if you just naturally got some high level Vortex from building them as like a carry unit, and you want to transition them into like a tank. The field maintenance is also really good and has good synergy with the emergency armor. And then lastly, we have the shield generator technology. I find the shield that they generate a little weak, but it can definitely be very annoying to synergize with electromagnetic twin and emergency armor. So essentially, while you're under the emergency armor's protection, you can get 2.5 shots of attack out, meaning that you're halfway to building another shield that just kind of lingers on the ground. So this could be a thing. Another way to do it is how I used to run my Vortex as a full carry. So when I used to play full carry Vortex, this used to be my tech bar with the EMP cloud. As after we triple tech our vortexes, we have lots of DPS, and we actually shoot fast enough to chaff clear as well, especially with the twins. Then the last thing we need is to just shut down any annoying technologies that stand in our way. Maybe like a mountain range or some kind of annoying tech, like maybe like a scorpion range, for example. And this is a 10-meter radius of EMP, unlike Marksman or Phoenix, where it only targets singular. But I do find it now it's a little too expensive and just not good enough. Mustang. Right now, I run my Mustang as a pure chaff clear unit with one tech as a supporting role. So my supporting tech is the Missile Interceptor. This is a must-have, in my opinion, because Mustangs are super effective at intercepting missiles, and it's very effective against your opponent's hot dogs, aka fire hounds. So whenever I don't have this tech on the bar, I always regret it as I run into some kind of round 4 War Factory, Fire Hound. So very good. This is also effective against your opponent's carry Overlord or carry Phantom Ray, as long as they don't have burst mode. Then as for chaff clear, we run one of the best technologies in the game, the calling rounds. Even though it just got nerfed today with a cost increase, the HP threshold still makes this technology one shot same level crawlers as long as the crawlers don't have level 2 defense. And this is a phenomenal way to gain experience for your Mustangs to kind of keep up with your opponent's crawler levels. And by clicking this technology first, you're going to have these Mustangs act both as a chaff and chaff clear. They can they'll stay back behind your army because it still has a good base range while your opponent's crawlers come in. But once the crawlers are done, these fast moving units are going to move forward and provide a secondary layer of chaff for your DPS and carry units. So this is a surprising and unusual technology that I like to click without the range enhancement first a lot of times. However, if my opponent is into Vulcans and I can somehow, if I can click the range enhancement to keep them behind my tanky units, then my range enhancement can be is usually my second tech. As for headbutt scenarios, the HE ammo combined with calling rounds can just erase everything on the board in an instant. Especially with this technology costing only 50 supplies. It's ridiculous. It's just such good value. Alternatively, I like to run range and HE against my opponent's carry Fang board. What makes carry Fangs strong against Mustangs is the grenade technology, the splash damage. So you need to match your opponent's grenade Fangs with HE ammo Fangs and not calling rounds. Because once you click HE ammo, the damage reduction of 35% is not going to severely impact your ability to take down air-based armored units. However, if you go for both HE and the calling rounds together, then you're definitely not going to do nearly enough DPS to break through the shield technologies. Then you require Phoenixes or Marksman or Raiden to help you out here. Another way to play Mustang is like a traditional old school carry Mustang tech, where you always go for the range enhancement first, and then you can go for AP bullet in the later part of the game once you have level 2 to level 4 Mustangs on the board, and you just erase everything known to existence. It used to be just so powerful with the Mustang's base damage and ability to rack up levels. And then you have the option to go for the aerial specialization to just erase anything in the air. Like, this is honestly range and aerial mode is still one of the best counter against your opponent's carry Overlord build. So I definitely wouldn't sleep on the aerial specialization. But in the current meta, AP bullet is probably out. You most definitely want to run calling rounds if not our current setup, falling rounds with HE ammo. Sledgehammer. This unit can be tank, DPS, chaff clear, support, one round, one tech wonder. It can be everything, but it's not very good at anything. Right now, we are running a pure support type of Sledgehammer, also kind of like a one round wonder, with the armor enhancement, damage sharing, and field maintenance. If you have watched any of Ray Master's old videos where he runs field maintenance and damage sharing sledgehammers every single game, you know exactly how powerful this combo is. This combo hasn't been nerfed, very cheap, and allows your sledgehammer line to go from these medium-sized chaff units and to combine to turn into this monster of a tank altogether. So by running these two techs together, we have the potential of just kind of closing out the game by making a super giant tank that recovers its health continuously in the later part of the game. As for one tech wonder, we also run armor enhancement. This is the same idea as the Arclight armor enhancement. If we get a late game multi high level sledgehammer drop, this will allow us to just be super annoying and have these sledgehammers lock up our opponent's Mustangs or Vulcan shots. And then I just run range enhancement just for the heck of it, just in case I want to tech one thing on the sledgehammers and allow them to chaff clear a little bit and do a little bit of damage. But really not going to click the range enhancement ever unless I am going for a full carry sledgehammer loadout, which is the old school range, mech rage, AP bullet, and EMP shot. I definitely think this loadout here is very playable in the current meta, especially with AP bullet getting a buff today in today's patch. Meaning that you can go for mech rage first to get your sledgehammer some levels and movement speed, and also kind of chaff clear a little bit faster. And once your opponent has the range advantage on you, you go range, and you finish with either AP bullet and or EMP shot. These two techs allows your sledgehammers to overpower your opponent's scorpions. So do not underestimate the power of sledgehammers in a carry form. So those are the two ways to play sledgehammers. Stormcaller, the unit with a new technology from today's patch. This unit is a pure DPS unit, long range specialist, fantastic in a standard matchup, and excellent in a defensive posture against your opponent's Sabertooth and Tarantulas. So the new tech, Heavy Missile, increases its attack power by 120, replacing the old AP bullet. But that's not it. It also increases your missile HP by 250% at the cost of a slightly slower attack interval, 25%. And this is going to scale with the recent buff to the Stormcallers, giving them higher missile HP at higher level, meaning a level 3 Stormcaller with heavy missiles can have a tremendous amount of HP for your per missile, although I don't know how much HP per missile. This means spamming Stormcallers in any matchup could be potentially phenomenal, because these missiles cannot be shut down by even War Factory anti-missile interceptor. So this is a new tech that you definitely have to equip if you ever want to have effective Stormcallers that cannot be shut down. And with higher HP, it comes with another perk, meaning that your Stormcallers are more likely going to land their attacks on the ground. essentially meaning we can apply the ground fire effect from the incendiary bomb technology more reliably. This allows us to kill any kind of late arriving Fangs in a standard matchup. It used to be one of the best technologies in the game before the Mustangs got their missile interceptor tech. And then another way to battle out in a standard matchup is to have EMP explosion, allowing your Stormcallers to shut down Vulcan and melting point technologies from afar, allowing your Arclight or Vulcan or even Typhoons to outrange your opponent's units and kind of take the upper hand. Both of these technologies are made possible and even better now with the heavy missile tech, that you're no longer afraid of missile interceptors that much. I literally had a game today where my opponent had, no joke, like 10 missile devices across the board with Mustang and Sabertooth missile interceptors, and they still couldn't intercept all the missiles once I started to spam high-level Stormcallers with heavy missiles. And lastly, the range technology on the Stormcallers may seem counterintuitive as we already have 180 meters range, but this is going to help you win out in any kind of Stormcaller mirror matchup, especially with the new buff and the new tech. I can guarantee you're going to encounter a lot of range enhancement Stormcaller mirror games. So by having the range enhancement is going to help you get that upper edge in the mirror matchup. The other two techs we have Launcher Overload, which increases your attack, decrease your attack interval, making them shoot super fast. This technology almost requires you to click the range enhancement to offset the range reduction, but it does give you a lot of damage output, essentially doubling your DPS. And then a old school favorite of mine, the HE ammo. You will use this technology in the cases of against carry hounds, sledgehammers, and void eyes. Maybe not carry, but just like the HE ammo is super effective against those squishy medium-sized units, actually clearing those packs much more effectively. And it's so cheap, so a lot of times if I have 2 or 3 Stormcallers on the board and I don't want to tech them further, I would just go for the HE ammo for a little faster chaff clear, but not anymore with this new tech. Steel Ball, high DPS units, high speed, and has one of the best techs in the game, and it's the Mechanical Division tech. This is a must-have on every single Steel Ball tech bar, whether you run carry or just support, as it turns these Steel Balls into one of the strongest ground-based chaff units in the game, because each pack of Steel Ball will spawn 20 total crawlers, which is almost one entire pack, giving you tons of value for these 200 cost supply units. And this is especially powerful if there is the subsidized Steel Ball card, reducing your Steel Ball cost by 50. At that point, you pretty much just only want to make Steel Balls with Mech Div. And this is also a really good tech if you're running Production War Factory or have a Steel Ball production line item on your Giant. This is a must-have. Besides this awesome support tech, I like to have armor enhancement on my Steel Ball for exactly the same reason as my Arclight and Sledgehammers, and it's to lock up my opponent's Vulcan and Fire Badger fire once I get a good unit drop, like level 2, level 3 Steel Ball drop. And with the Steel Balls being a short range, high movement speed unit, it matches my playstyle of mid-range aggro, so it allows me to get like a lot of early game tempo against the Vulcan player, potentially closing out the game or forcing them into some other units like Raiden or Scorpions, which delays their Vulcan marksman setup. So armor enhancement is my personal favorite. And if I ever want to turn my steel balls into my DPS carry unit, I like to go for the range technology. Combined with the armor enhancement, we can get a lot of levels and just kind of snowball off the armor enhancement tech against my opponent's Vulcans. And my third tech here, damage sharing, is a tech that I almost never take, but I just have it just in case for a one round closing out the game technology. Let's say I get level 4, level 3 steel ball drop in the mid game. Level 3 is likely. I can go for the damage sharing, and my opponent is lacking DPS, and I have maybe a nano repair kit as an item I can equip. Then you can all of a sudden turn your steel ball into this game winning, super annoying tanky unit for your opponent to deal with. Another way to play the steel ball is a lot of 201 players like to do is with range and fortified target lock. This is a great way to punish your opponent's hyper aggression setup with, say, Titan units, say like Fortress or War Factory or Mountains. By having the range tech combined with this, if you set up your steel balls within range of your opponent's high level giant units with some chaff in front, you can instantly take them all out in the first 5 seconds of the game, and then potentially just turning the tide and winning the game outright in one swoop. If you're not running this and you like to play more of a standard game and you like to have the steel balls all the way in the back, then kinetic charge is definitely your best friend. As by the time your steel ball goes from the back line to the middle of the board, it's going to have gained around 40 meters of attack range, meaning that it's gained the same amount of range as the range enhancement at half the cost. The drawback is this doesn't work if you're in an aggro position or a headbutt position. This is why it's still really nice to have the range enhancement in addition to the kinetic charge. Then you can potentially win out against mountains and war factories by just having these phenomenal range on the steel balls, kind of revitalizing the old improved steel ball or extended range steel ball card a little bit. And if you're going for lots and lots of carry DPS steel balls, then I highly recommend going for the energy absorption, as this technology is especially good against melting point or multi-melters, as the steel balls can potentially out-heal the multi-melter's charging beams and end up being able to grant you a victory against multi-melters. Fire Badgers. This is one of my favorite units in the game as it is super tanky, it chaff clears at a decent rate, and it has the potential to be a carry, a one tech support, or just a not techless tanky units that lay the ground on fire once you have some oil on the ground. So we like to run the Scorching Charge, aka Hot Wheel technology, for a one tech wonder, giving our Fire Badgers a lot of HP buff and allowing them to charge into a group of units, laying the ground on fire. It literally does it all. It tanks, it deals impact damage, splash, and also lays the ground on fire. Essentially meaning that in the early game or late game, we can just go for this 200 supply tech off a unit drop, then we have guaranteed ground fire on our opponent's side as it charges into them. If we're looking to play more of a carry or like pure chaff clear Fire Badger, then we're looking at either the range or counterfire technology as our first take to increase the range of these units, allowing them to accumulate experience, chaff clear better, and kind of just be more tanky. And I would say level 2 Fire Badgers is significantly stronger than level 1, even better than most of the other level 2 units. So we click the counter fire when our opponent has tick damage. So if your opponent has fire hounds and they're laying the ground on fire, if they have Mustangs or even Typhoons that don't do a lot of singular damage, and you can afford to get your Fire Badgers hit by those tick damage to activate counterfire, then this is a fantastic first tech to grab, because it also gives you more tankability. If your opponent is right away into Scorpions or other DPS units that are killing the Fire Badgers, but you're stubborn like me and you want to keep playing Fire Badgers, then the range enhancement is a great way to keep them behind your chaff units and keep them in the back. So another way, and then from here, whether you have range or the counterfire, the next tech grab is the Scorching Fire. With level 2 Fire Badger and Scorching Fire and some tower attack enhancement, these guys can erase level 2, level 3 crawlers with subterranean blitz with ease. So don't underestimate this technology if you're going for an entire board of Fire Badgers. Another way to play your Fire Badger, this is how I used to play my Fire Badger, was this. Going for a support tech of Ignite, because I'm going to be spamming the entire board with range Fire Badgers, using the napalm technologies to lay everything on the ground to kill them right away, allowing my DPS units to lock on. And then if my opponent has really tanky like Titans, you can also go for the Ignite technology. And then running the field maintenance as a one tech wonder off high level unit drop. If I'm ever just looking for some frontline tank, do like a little DPS check for my opponent, then this gives me another option if I don't get anything good off the unit drop. So having this, and then Napalm, since it got nerfed, unfortunately, it just doesn't last on the ground for long enough, and it's not wide enough to be this overpowering technology. Although it's still good, I just don't think it's nearly as good as having a very reliable way of keeping your Fire Badgers alive and dealing just pure DPS for chaff clear. Sabertooth. This unit has been nerfed to the ground. It used to be one of my favorite early game tempo units that I can carry into the late game as well. But now I only play it for early game tempo, like round 1 to maybe round 5. So I'm running the Missile Interceptor for the cases of your opponent going for early game Stormcallers to go against the Sabertooth. By clicking this really cheap technology, it allows me to reduce the DPS, because oftentimes the Stormcallers will be your opponent's only DPS in the early game. So this is going to allow us to reduce DPS, push through, and make a run for the tower. If my opponent is going for a Vulcan Marksman setup, then I'm more likely to go into the Sabertooth in the early game with my range enhancement, and later on the double shot tech once I have more Sabertooth and more levels. These two techs combined with a good solid chaff clear unit like an Arclight or Calling Rounds Mustang can allow you to just out-tempo your opponent's Vulcans before they can get their board entirely set up. And then the field maintenance tech here, I run as a one tech wonder off for the flexibility option to have this one tanky boy. Oftentimes we get like a level 4 Sabertooth in the middle of the game. And by clicking this cheap 200 technology, I have this unkillable monster on the front line for DPS check. And if our opponent reacts to it with a melting point, you just simply sell it and transition that cash into something to counter the melting point. So this is a phenomenal one-tech wonder. In the good old days when Sabertooth was all the rage with Hounds, I used to run the secondary armament. Essentially, clicking this tech and never clicking the range tech to allow these guys to just charge into your opponent's tower and clear all the medium-sized units on the way. So this is a good tech if you play a very, very hyper-aggressive gameplay. Another tech that used to be pretty decent, probably would want to run it like this, in a headbutt especially, is the field entrenchment technology, allowing your Sabertooth to shoot faster, have more HP, and just overall be really annoying as they become so tanky. So this can be a really solid headbutt technology if you find yourself playing aggro often and get into the headbutt situation a lot. For now, I think Sabertooth is just not very playable. Even with these two techs together, they don't deal enough DPS and they get outscaled by fortresses and mountain. So maybe gear up your Sabertooth more for these like one tech early game tempo gameplay and then find a way to sell it if they become obsolete. Tarantula, one of the most effective mid-range aggro chaff clear unit in the game, and that is thanks to its pretty decent splash with movement speed, tankability, and the HE ammo. This is a phenomenal tech that I almost always have on my Tarantula. It's good against shielded fangs, it's good against underground crawlers, and it's also kind of good against hounds. So it's just kind of crazy, taking your splash range from 5 meters, 12 meters, and at the expense of some attack power, which is totally fine. Tarantulas at level 2, one-shot crawlers anyway. So with the HE ammo as a nice tech, this is typically not my first tech unless we are in a headbutt. So only good as a first tech in a headbutt. Typically, we want to have the range enhancement technology on your Tarantula to allow them to not die too quickly and also lock on to the important chaff units sooner. So this is usually your first tech, and especially if you play in like a mid-range, even in a standard defensive posture, the range enhancement can be phenomenal. Just like the Arclight, be careful if your opponent has fortresses or even tarantulas or Sabertooth in front of your tarantulas, as the range enhancement could be a double-edged sword, allowing them to lock on to those tanky units and just kind of never kill them, ever. Another tech that is kind of a staple for a carry tarantula chaff clear is the Mech Rage technology. This is almost as good as the HE ammo in terms of chaff clear, as it allows your tarantulas to attack faster. So I would say it's slightly better if you don't want to have a damage reduction. Let's say your opponent has like level 2 or like level 2 sledgehammers in the front line, and you don't want to get stuck on them too quickly, or for too long, sorry. So in those cases, you might want to go for the Mech Rage. And this is especially clickable as a tech if you're pulling your opponent's board apart and trying to make a beeline for the tower debuff. Very, very good. And the third tech Right now, I'm running Armor Enhancement, as it just makes my Tarantulas very tanky in the early game. So in case I don't want to play too hard into my Tarantula, I just want to give him one tech off a unit drop and just to have some tanks. This is my go-to technology. 100 supply only, making them really powerful. Other people like to play Tarantulas with field maintenance for the same reason, 30% HP buff, and allows them to continuously restore their health. I just find this tech a little bit vulnerable to hackers, versus Armor Enhancement almost makes your Tarantula so tanky that the hackers don't have time to hack through them. So that's why I'm going for Armor Enhancement. And I know my chat is going to be raving about the Spider Mine. This is my old setup here. Full carry, ground-based Tarantula. Just swarm the entire board with Tarantulas, supported with Phoenixes for anti-air, and then eventually you click this really cheap technology that deals tons of damage now, the Spider Mine, creating these like mid-game, late-game chaff that are just super annoying against your opponent's melting point or even fortresses. Other ways to play it is if you don't want your Tarantula to chaff clear, you can play AP Bullet with Mech Rage. This combo allows your Tarantulas to even take down fortresses or even Titan units in the process. And if you are trying to do a challenge like me, you can also go for anti-air ammunition. That's like if your opponent ever goes for too many Wasp against your Tarantula Phoenix composition, sometimes they don't expect you to have this tech. And then if you have range in HE, then the AA ammunition can just delete your opponent's Wasp in the process without you having to overinvest into Mustangs or your own Wasp for anti-air. Rhino. We run 3 separate one tech wonder techs on this unit because of its versatility in different scenarios of a unit drop. The most common tech that we use is the armor enhancement. For a measly 200 supplies, we can boost up our Rhino's HP by 50%, making this tanky unit even stronger. And then most importantly, we can block a lot of fire and Mustang damage. Oftentimes, we will click this technology off a double or triple Rhino drop in the mid-game phase against our opponent's Mustangs or Fire Badgers or Vulcans. It buys you 1 to 2 rounds of instant tempo, and you could end up dealing a lot of damage to your opponent and make them overreact by either going for a melting point, hacker, steel balls, or other form of high DPS units. And then you can just sell out of it. So I find for 200 supplies, this is a very, very important tech on the Rhino. Definitely, in any kind of build setup, you have to have the armor enhancement. The other one tech wonder I like to have is the Whirlwind. For only 150 supplies, if you get a double level 1 Rhino drop in the early game, this can solve your deep flank issue. Let's say your opponent puts a crawler and a sledgehammer in your deep flank, causing all of your units to be stuck on them and buying time for your opponent to push into your tower. Then if you, in this scenario, you can line up the Rhino right in the middle of his crawlers in the back and click this really cheap technology that's going to allow you to instantly clear an entire pack of crawlers in one swipe. And then as the Rhino move into the sledgehammers, it's going to take 1 to 2 swipes only to take out the entire pack of sledgehammer. And then you get this powerful unit marching forward, acting as this kind of late chaff clear, late tank unit for your army. So I find this is one of the most cost-effective and definitely one of the fastest ways to deal with a annoying deep flank crawler and sledgehammer formation. In addition, the Whirlwind technology is really good in setting up a Rhino blender, meaning that we put 3 to 5 rhinos in a death ball, and we're just going to mobile beacon them into your opponent's tower. As the frontline Rhino Whirlwind and clear all the chaff, the backline Rhino are going to push it forward, causing you to just kind of have this unstoppable death ball that can take tower really quickly. And that is why we also equipped another phenomenally cheap technology, 100 supply, mechanical rage, giving you additional 5 meters per second for movement speed, and also making you attack faster. Thus, you can clear chaff faster and get into the tower even faster. I would say this technology, we usually like to have this after we go for the Whirlwind. It's kind of like a supporting tech for the Whirlwind aggressive Rhino setup. The last tech, also a one tech wonder, is the Final Blitz. We like to have this tech available in the case of our opponent, say, going for a very, very aggressive setup. Maybe he has steel balls right on the line, or Sabertooth, or even his own rhinos right on the line, pushing into our tower while we're in a defensive scenario. In those cases, getting some high-level rhino drop later in the game can allow us to go for this Final Blitz tech to surprise our opponent by blowing up his front line instantly by just elite recruiting multiple level 2 rhinos in addition to the drop. This could potentially turn the tide and allow you to just one round KO your opponent. This is why we run this as our last tech on the Rhino, as a one round wonder. You definitely have to be aware of all of these one round wonder techs, especially these two on the right, as once you click them, you have to expect your opponent to go for some kind of EMP or some kind of way to countermeasure your technology. In those cases, you can either just sell out of your Rhino or equip them with the photon emission from a Farseer or a Overlord. So you have to think about when you want to click these and whether or not you're okay selling out of your Rhino afterwards. Other ways of playing the Rhino is the Super Carry Rhino, which you would equip the Power Armor. Combining it with Mechanical Rage and the Whirlwind, this makes the Rhino, this is like the best triple tech setup for Carry Rhino to rush into your opponent's tower in a death ball. I would say even the armor enhancement would help a lot too by making them tankier. If you like to play backline Rhino and like to have them combat evolve over during the battle, this is another tech that I find very cost effective. If you just have 2 casual Rhinos in the backline clearing the deep flank and you don't plan on overcommitting into a Whirlwind, you could always go for the one tech on the combat evolution. Once again, very cheap technology, so you don't really feel bad if your opponent ends up getting EMP to counter it. The idea is that your Rhino will continue to get buffed while clearing the deep flanks, and then by the time they get to the front line towards the mid of the battle, you end up having some really powerful Rhinos that your opponent might not have any DPS to deal with. From here, we have Wreckage Recycling. This is one of my old favorite techs. I would say if I'm not running Final Blitz, I'm likely running Wreckage Recycling, as this is a pretty decent tech to couple with your Whirlwind and Mechanical Rage. If you're going for full DPS and speed, then allowing your Rhinos to stay alive for a little bit longer is always going to be good. This is especially powerful against units like Fortress or Vulcan. But do keep in mind, oftentimes the counter against Rhino is a melting point or steel ball. In those cases, wreckage recycling is not going to do too much for you. So that's why I don't run this anymore. And the same idea with the field maintenance, given that having the armor enhancement alone makes the Rhino so tanky that it oftentimes requires a melting point or steel ball answer. Pairing it with field maintenance just seems like a waste of a tech, as usually we're going to expect our Rhino getting hacked, EMP'd, or melting point. So this tech, as good as it is, I don't like to run it. And same idea with photon coating, because if we are clicking 1 to 2 techs on the Rhino already, clicking a second or third tech of photon coating oftentimes is less cost effective than just recruiting a Farseer or even a Overlord to have an area effect of photon emission rather than just photon coating our one unit. Even though the photon coating does have 5 extra seconds of duration compared to the emission, I just don't think that's worth the extra cost. This is so expensive. That's our Rhino tech. Hacker. Literally my new favorite unit, and it just got buffed again today. I already thought it was pretty strong prior to the buff, but now that the delay in attack is reduced by a little bit, it's going to be even stronger. For Hacker, I run a full Hacker tech. I guess Hacker is in its role of its own. It's kind of like DPS. So full DPS with some support tech. So Hacker, we need range, absolutely. The unit is so squishy and you don't want them to have to walk forward just to lock on to the important units. I like as much range as possible on the Hackers as a first tech so they can sit back and target those Tarantulas and Sabertooth or Rhinos before they can even get close to attacking the Hackers. Once we have the range enhancement and we start to accumulate some levels and start to fill the board with Hackers, the barrier technology is a phenomenal second tech as it gives us a lot of value, 16,000 per rank of the barrier, and Hackers level really quickly. So oftentimes you have like lots of level 2 and level 3 Hackers on the board, and it's just going to help you block any ground effects, block any spells, and be very effective with your money. If your opponent is playing Assault Marksman, then the EMP interference is a must-have, as it turns the marksman from these tanky units back to their original squishy self, so making you hack them in literally like half a second. And then once the assault marksmen are hacked, they resume their assault mode technology, being tanky again, giving you anti-air and a tank in the process. And this is also pretty good in going up against melting point, as you can shut down their range technology and kind of win that battle this way. As for enhanced control, I like to have this on the bar against my opponent's Sandworms. If opponent ever goes super hard into Sandworms against your Vulcan marksman composition, enhanced control becomes a phenomenal technology to overtake these Sandworms, making them super tanky at full health, and just turn the tide of the battle. You can argue that you can take out enhanced control and run multi-control if you are more vulnerable against Steel Ball or even Hounds coming at your way. So I rarely click this tech, as my playstyle usually I'm more afraid of the big giant units. And this tech, honestly, as good as it is, it's rarely clicked unless you're noticing your opponent having these really juicy high value targets for you to hack. Wasp. This unit has so many good technologies to allow it to be either chaff clear, DPS, or air chaff. It's one of the most versatile unit regarding its technologies. For us, we run a hybrid Wasp. We use the Wasp for air chaff with the energy shield technology. This is a phenomenal technology against your opponent's Raiden, Marksman, or Phoenixes. It's really nice to be able to drop 3 packs of Wasp like this technology and kind of ignore all the ground-based chaff clear units that your opponent has. This is especially powerful when your opponent is really focused on ground-based chaff, such as Vulcan Marksman. And just having these guys can kind of close out the game for you, disabling your opponent's marksman DPS entirely. From there, we run another kind of hybrid of a DPS Wasp. We run the range to enable our Wasp to be able to assume its role of DPS by staying back and locking onto the key units as early as possible. And on top of that, we have 2 specialization technologies. One is for ground. This essentially adds so much DPS to ground-based units, and this one is the aerial specialization is just one of the best anti-air combo with range enhancement. This thing, once you double tech, your Wasp can basically kill every single air unit in the game. As long as you have enough chaff in front of it, it's going to just gun it down. The reason why we're running ground specialization now is because of the rise of Rhino with the new Season 8's buff to Rhino's technology. We've been experimenting a lot with Rhino Wasp, aka Gospel. And having Wasp with ground spec along with your Rhino, you can take down its arch nemesis, the anti-air fortress, fairly easily with enough levels and enough of your swarm army. Before we ran the ground spec, this was my Season 8 technology bar. As I used Wasp for EMP shot a lot, especially against round 4 War Factory, and especially when they transitioned from Factory into Melting Point. I just found range with EMP so effective against my opponent's Melting Point. So this is such a cheap technology. Oftentimes you can just get away with clicking this 100 tech on its own, and it would do the magic. Another way to play Wasp is to treat it as a pure anti-air unit. And with that, you're going to want to run Elite Marksman. So by having the Elite Marksman tech available, this is going to ensure that you can win against your opponent's anti-air Wasp effectively. Anytime you get into a Wasp mirror battle, always check your opponent's tech bar. If you run range and anti-air, but you don't run Elite Marksman, and your opponent does, then you should probably not try to contest the anti-air spot using the Wasp. You're better off swapping into anti-air barrage or Mustang anti-air. So if you want to be the dominant person in a Wasp battle, the Elite Marksman tech is phenomenal. This used to be very popular in the days of a lot of Vulcan Marksman, which leads to a lot of late game transition into mass Wasp. Okay, another way to play Wasp, there are so many ways to play Wasp, I can't wait to show you all, is something like this. With the jump drive. Likely not with the shield, you're going to want your Wasp as these annoying high DPS units You can even run it with HE ammo that you just warp around the map, make your opponent overcommit into Mustangs in every corner of the map. And then as they populate their map with Mustangs, you just play something that counters the Mustangs really hard, like maybe like Fire Badgers or anything with armor technology. Oftentimes when you run the jump drive tech, this is going to be the only tech that you click on the Wasp, because you're just going to maybe have like 2 packs of them, jump around, and once you have exhausted all corners, you just jump them to the back of your map to protect the deep flank, or you can even sell out of it because the technology is so cheap. Okay. Another way of Wasp is to run your Wasp with ground spec with HE ammo. This used to be a pretty popular combo to play with steel balls, as your Wasp are going to chaff clear for your steel balls with range and HE, and eventually you can even click like anti-air or ground spec to further improve your chaff clear efficiency. And honestly, in a pure Wasp against Wasp battle, I would say HE could be almost as good, or if not better, than the Elite Marksman. So maybe you can even run this tech bar if you want to dominate the air. It really depends on the setup and depends on how many levels you have. As for Ignite, I honestly have never used Wasp for Ignite because typically I don't use this tech very often. It's too slow. And Wasp just has so many other good techs that I'm oftentimes conflicted in terms of which one I should run. I just kind of stick with this. And then lastly, the AP bullet is kind of trash. Well, it's very trash, especially when you have air specialization and ground specialization available already. These just provide way too much and way too much value and way more damage boost than the measly 50% attack buff. So I don't recommend running it. Either you run this or run this, and that's more than enough DPS in general. Phoenix, one of the best air-based DPS units in the game. Oftentimes you always see a round 2 Phoenix in high MMR play no matter what happens. They're just so good. I like having Phoenix as a hybrid unit on my board with EMP as a supporting technology, and we have range and charge shot for this patch for the DPS tech loadout. We generally want to have range enhancement always before we click a charge shot or before we click a launcher overload. Because of the reduction from these technologies in range, to potentially pull your Phoenix too far forward to be gunned down early, therefore kind of taking away their DPS ability. However, if you run charge shot or launcher overload and you get the extended range Phoenix card, that could potentially allow you to click these DPS technologies first before you go for the range enhancement to kind of boost it up, as the extended range card kind of counteracts the range reduction from these technologies. As we go into commit into these DPS carry Phoenixes, we want to have at least one technology, if not 2 technologies, to help the Phoenixes with survivability, because they are so vulnerable to anti-air barrage, and that's an anti-air barrage is just such an easy way to snipe them out of the air without having to clear the chaff in front of them. So you always want to have at least quantum reassembly or energy shield or even both if you're really afraid of your phoenixes getting gunned down too early and you'd like to commit to mass phoenixes. However, for me, I still prefer having the EMP shot on the phoenix, mainly because of the prevalence of the Typhoon in this new season. Seeing that Typhoons have a regeneration technology that just gets so much value, I believe EMP shot is entirely necessary. And it's also really good against your opponent's against your opponent's phoenixes with quantum reassembly. So this is my current loadout with charge shot as my DPS tech. Other ways to play the phoenix, it used to be jump drive used to be my favorite tech on the Phoenix. I used to never rely on Phoenixes for DPS, for like carry DPS. I just enjoy having them jumping around in the deep flanks or in the front of the tower to snipe down our opponent's tower to get early game tempo. And then when I'm done with jump drive, I just jump them to the back of the map, protect my deep flank, and they still become these long range reliable sources of DPS. For a while, I was running this tech loadout. I did not run EMP shot on the Phoenixes last season because my Wasp had the EMP shot. So I don't like to have too many of the same units with like these supporting tech. I like to distribute it accordingly based on my playstyle at the moment. So last season, I played Elite Marksman Phoenix because I wanted to have the additional range and attack power to be able to combat against opponents' high-level Raidens with range. I find Phoenix against Raiden, oftentimes you can get scammed by just the fork lightning. However, if you can stay out of their range, Phoenixes can actually do just enough damage to take them out. So this is a absolutely playable technology if you plan on using your Phoenixes for hard carry often. Phantom Ray. I like to play this unit as a high DPS unit with the option to play it as a supporting one tech wonder with the armor enhancement. I think between your Phantom Ray and your Wraith, you need to have one of them equipping the armor enhancement. And since my Wraith is running a full carry, I choose my Phantom Ray to run armor enhancement. And I do think Phantom is the better choice because it comes in packs of 3 and it's cheaper than the Wraith by 100 supplies, making them very efficient in terms of just elite recruiting later in the game to shut down your opponent's Mustang damage entirely. Outside of this one tech wonder, I run a full ground focused DPS setup with the range enhancement, burst mode, and ground targeting. The idea of the burst mode is that you click this technology if your opponent is investing money into anti-missile devices or just missile interceptor technologies. By having the burst, you're going to be able to overwhelm those technologies and devices. And it's also really good if your opponent has a lot of titans on the ground or in the air, that you just need that big burst of damage against them. From there, we either like to click the ground targeting or the range enhancement technology first. If we have the extended range Phantom Ray card, then we're likely to click the range enhancement first, as that allows your Phantom Rays to have a tremendous amount of range even without the ground targeting tech. And Phantom Rays, if you didn't know, they deal like one of the highest DPS per cost in this entire game. So if you can get them online and safe in the back, they can be very valuable. If we don't have the enhanced extended range Phantom Ray card, I typically like to click the ground targeting tech first, especially if our opponent is all ground based with like these medium size, heavy size units, as we can just boost our Phantom Ray's range to 125 meters, and they're going to prioritize target units that are outside of this 65-meter range. And then by the time we clear all the ground, if there's any leftover air units, we typically can still have the Phantom Rays help us clean up. It's like a dual functioning unit here. Here is another way to load out your Phantom Ray. That is to play it as these low range, heavy armored air units that can be super annoying to deal with. So what you want to do is deploy your Phantom Rays in your opponent's deep flank, put it all the way in the back, and equip the high explosive ammo for on the second round that they kind of warp in. And this technology is going to allow you to pretty much one-shot an entire pack of crawler if you put a crawler pack in front of your Phantom. So making you super efficient in this deep corner, like deep flank battle, annoying and pull units from your opponent's battlefield. And you can combine that with a stealth cloak to make your Phantom Rays even tankier and stronger and untargetable while they're flying towards your opponent's phoenixes. And if you're running this kind of loadout, you probably want to run a energy shield tech to be extra annoying, to just kind of have the ability and the option to go for double tanky Phantom Rays to basically making them unkillable. The last tech of the Phantom Ray that is a fantastic supporting and one tech wonder is the Sticky Oil Bomb. If you are playing in a headbutt or defending against your opponent's aggression and you want to light the ground on fire and spread the fire a little bit wider, make them last a little bit longer, then all you have to do is just click this one tech for 100 supplies, put your Phantom Rays right on the line to spread everything on fire. And this is a fantastic tech if you don't intend on investing too heavily into any other technologies. The phenomenal one tech wonder. Wraith, the king of headbutt, one of the, well, literally the best chaff clear unit in the game because it has 4 separate guns, so it is less likely to get lock on to a tanky unit and not chaff clear on the side. For the Wraith, we run a full carry Wraith for chaff clear and potentially even DPS if we got enough levels. The first tech we have is usually the range enhancement, as the Wraith only has 60-meter range. If you don't have the range enhancement technology as your first tech, you can easily get targeted by anti-air Farseer or anti-air Marksman. Always go for this. From here, you want to assess the situation and typically go for the floating artillery array, aka 8-gun, doubling your Wraith's DPS and further reducing the chances of your Wraith getting stuck on tanky units and not chaff clear. Usually, the combination of the range and 8-gun is more than enough to get your board set up for phenomenal instant chaff clear to pair up with maybe a Wraith Steel Bolt push or any other DPS units. As a one tech wonder, or further enhancing Wraith's ability to carry, we run the Degeneration Beam to slow down everything around them, increase the damage amplifying, and reduce the damage they deal. Just like a phenomenal all-around technology in a headbutt situation. I say this is a one tech wonder because you can literally have a on-tech Wraith and get a double Wraith drop in later in the game and just click this tech to help you close out the game in one round. And this technology usually prompts your opponent to grab either like an EMP Phoenix or a photon emission technology. So usually the effect of this tech can usually only last 1 to 2 rounds at most. Okay, so let's go back to our carry Wraith here. Let's say we run the range enhancement and 8 gun in a headbutt situation, and your opponent all of a sudden goes for tons of anti-air marksman or tons of anti-air Farseer. From here, you can run the land cruiser technology to turn your Wraith from these airborne units into a ground-based unit, increasing the range by a whopping 50, while kind of increasing the attack interval, making it slower at chaff clear, but entirely safe from the anti-air technology. You do have to keep in mind, once you click this, there's no going back. You're going to be vulnerable to air units, especially Wasp. So make sure once you click this, be prepared to go for Mustangs in return. Another way to play the Wraith is to use it as a frontline self-regenerating tank unit against your opponent's anti-air barrage or Mustangs with range. By having either one of these or both of these technologies equipped, you can either go for field maintenance against the anti-air barrage, you can go for armor enhancement against the Mustangs, or you can literally grab a level 3 Wraith drop from the unit drop, go for double tech armor and field maintenance to make this unkillable air unit that also just kills everything in sight. And let's say your opponent is down to sub 300 or sub 250 or sub 500 HP, and you notice that they only have Mustangs for anti-air, you can easily just go for Elite Recruit 2 Wraiths, giving them these 2 techs to close out the game, kind of cheesing the round, finish the game here. Another way to kind of increase the chaff clear ability of the Wraith is the HE ammo, turning your Wraith's splash range from 8 to 15 meters. So every single shot has the same splash radius as a Scorpion. That's insane. This tech is arguably a lot more cost efficient than the 8 gun or chaff clear, because as you can see, the cost difference is 250 supplies. However, I don't like running it in this current state of my gameplay because the reduction in attack by 30% is going to sometimes can lead to our Wraith being stuck on units like Tarantula, regenerating Sledgehammers, or even Typhoons. So I just like having a gun for like pure power to crush my opponent's board with like the DPS of the Wraith. Scorpion. I treat the Scorpion as a utility unit that I get from unit drops, mainly utilizing these 2 technologies, the field maintenance and armor enhancement. So these are my 2 tech wonders to close out the game or to make my opponent overreact to the Scorpions. Oftentimes, you get a high level Scorpion drop in the middle of the game, and your opponent needs a DPS check. They may be too invested into Mustangs and Arclights and don't have enough to deal a burst amount of damage. Then that's where your level 3 Scorpion with field maintenance comes in to tie up your opponent's shots, kind of disabling their disabling their Raiden's DPS or making their Arclights lock onto these Scorpions. And this is such a cheap technology to click that I don't mind selling out of the Scorpions later on to once I get the value of making my opponent overreact. The same with the armor enhancement. If you're looking for a game closing move, just like the Wraith earlier, you can click these double tech for even cheaper than the Wraith. You have these units just walk right into your opponent's board without taking a single hit of damage. You do have to keep in mind, once you go for a single tech or double tech on your scorpions like these, you are very vulnerable to being hacked in return. And then these super annoying scorpions are going to become your problem to deal with. So definitely save this kind of move for the very last round of the game. Outside of the utility, I still like to have scorpions as their original role, which is a AoE DPS unit. With their 15-meter splash and their high damage output, they're phenomenal against sledgehammers, fire badgers, and even void eyes. So we definitely want to equip the range enhancement and the double shot. The range allows you to stay back and also prioritize target the units that are exposed in the front line sooner. We run the double shot because it's effective against Steel Ball's mechanical division. It's good against slightly tankier units such as your opponent's scorpions or say high level typhoons, for example. And if you get enough levels, the double shot is enough to help you take out like low level giant units like the Vulcan or the Fortress. If you're looking to play a pure DPS Scorpion, I would recommend swapping out of the two utility supporting technologies and going for the acid attack and potentially even convergent fire. If your opponent is not running a lot of sledges and it's mostly in Fortress, and for some reason you are in Scorpions, convergent fire can give you that extra little range advantage against your opponent's giant unit, increase and also speeding up the attack rate, which is phenomenal. And then lastly, acid attack honestly is such a good tech if you're in a defensive Scorpion posture and your opponent's pushing you with Fortress with barrier. The splash damage of the Scorpions with double shot are going to disable and take out the barriers. And with the acid attack leaving the ground on acid, your opponent's fortresses as they walk forward are going to start taking extra damage and lose 3% HP. All in all, a phenomenal technology for defensive posture. I personally just don't run acid in any way because I don't like the potential of having acid on my own battleground and then having to walk over it later on in the round. Okay. Controversial tech, the last tech of the Scorpion to highlight is the Siege Mode. This is a standard technology, standard or defensive tech for the Scorpion if your opponent doesn't have anything that's fast moving. And honestly, I would say this is a good tech against your opponent's carry Stormcallers. Especially before the Stormcaller new tech, oftentimes in the long range battle, when we invest into a lot of Stormcallers and the opponent goes for anti-missile devices, you're looking for, this siege mode gives you another way of applying long range pressure to your opponent's giant units, such as Vulcans. But I personally just don't think this tech is any good. It's too easily counterable, so don't run it. Farseer. I play this unit as a pure support and one tech wonder kind of unit. I typically never double tech my Farseers, as I want to use each individual tech for their individual purposes and nothing else. So we have the classic photon emission. Farseer is one of two units in this game that can emit photon coding to your allied forces. So if you're playing a ground-based army like assault marksman or even sandworms, the photon emission tech that only applies to ground units from the Farseer can be a phenomenal way to keep their techs going while making them even tankier in the process. The other supporting tech that I like to run sometimes is the scanning radar. This is a good tech if you are playing mass Vortex and you're just looking for a additional 10 meters of range to outrange your opponent's DPS units. And this can also be utilized in a long distance standard gameplay if you're playing Vulcan Marksman and you're looking for that extra edge to win the mirror matchup. One of the best use of Farseer, especially from unit drop, is the aerial specialization technology. If you are struggling against your opponent's Wraith push or Raidens, and you don't have any effective anti-air, sometimes you can be saved by a high-level Farseer drop in the middle of the game. Equip it with aerial spec. This unit can even take down your opponent's abyss within a few shots. It can be very effective and cost effective too at 200 supplies. And what makes it so good on the Farseer is the base range of 125. Even without having to click range enhancement, your Farseers are more likely to just stay in the back and be protected for the entire round of the battle. The last tech is the range enhancement. You're going to notice we run range enhancement on pretty much every single unit that has it available. It's just that good, allowing your Farseer to stay back even further. If your opponent is finding a way to target your Farseer even after you click the aerial specialization, you want to have the option to go for range to keep them even further back so they can stay out of harm's way. If you're somebody who enjoys playing carry Farseers, utilizing Farseer for DPS healing, then the burst mode is a must, as it allows you to launch 12 missiles at once. Just like the Phantom Ray, this technology is going to help you overcome any type of anti-missile devices or missile interceptor techs. And it's going to just increase your damage output by, I believe, like double or maybe even 1.5 fold shot. So definitely pair this technology with good chaff clear, as you're going to reload forever. Another tech I used to run quite often on the Farseer was to use it as my EMP applier, my EMP 1 tech wonder unit. This was back when I was running Wasp with EMP, and my Phoenixes did not have EMP, nor did my Marksman. So I needed a long range, single target EMP applying unit, and this can be a cheap option to go for. But however, I would say choose which units you run EMP on between the Phoenix, Farseer, and the Marksman. You probably don't want all three to have EMP. So you need to weigh out your options and decide either one or two out of these three units should have EMP, while the other units can equip better technologies. And the last tech to talk about is Missile Interceptor. This is not that strong. In comparison to the Mustang Interceptor, this one pales in comparison. But the plus side of it is that it's also a very cheap tech, and your Farseer does not stop attacking enemy units while missile intercepting. So if you're playing mass Farseer against your opponent's Stormcallers, this could be a good potential loadout to deal massive DPS while kind of reducing the amount of missile DPS coming your way. Typhoon, my most played unit this season thus far. We use the Typhoon as a pure chaff clear unit and sort of tanky unit as well. The most important tech for the Typhoon to accelerate their chaff clear ability is the wreckage detonation, aka explosive ammo in my book. This allows you to clear incoming crawlers and fangs faster than they can walk forward. Oftentimes, once you click this tech, you're going to see chaff just disappear, and then the Typhoon's lagging because they have cleared all the chaff in front of them, and they have to actually walk forward to find more chaff. That's just how effective this technology makes your Typhoons at chaff clearing. This is oftentimes my first tech because Typhoons already have a decent amount of range at 100 meters, and they're very tanky, so I don't mind them not having range tech. I kind of want them like staying in front of my Phoenixes or other DPS units. The second tech that makes Typhoons amazing in this season is the field reassembly tech. Even though it has been nerfed with a cost increase, it still works amazingly. It allows your Typhoons to come back with full health in 5 seconds, exactly where it died, once every round. So essentially, by clicking this 300 supply tech, you are doubling the numbers of Typhoons you get per battle. And if you're like me, who likes to spam Typhoons across the board to cover my chaff clear across the entire map, this tech just gives you so much value. And I would say another thing is when the Typhoons come back to life, oftentimes that 5-second delay is enough to allow the third and fourth wave of chaff units to come into the battle, and once your Typhoons respawn, they're going to target the chaff units once again, so saving them from locking onto your opponent's tank and DPS units. The range enhancement on the Typhoon is one very situational technology. I will click this technology usually after either wreckage or field reassembly. If we're in a standard setup, if we're playing long range Typhoon, giving Typhoons 140 meters range is crazy. It's better, it's longer range than any other ground-based chaff clear units. Another reason to click the range enhancement is when you start to notice that your Typhoons are truly just dying way too quickly, even with a field reassembly. So this is in the case of if your opponent has a lot of Phoenixes, like medium size, kind of squishy units that are outranging the Typhoons, and you don't mind the Typhoons locking onto your opponent's tank units too much, then you can click this tech. As long as you have good DPS to support your Typhoons, then it's pretty good. And the fourth spot on your Typhoon, I would say this is a flexible spot. Right now, I'm running maintenance array in case my opponent is playing Typhoon against us or having like Mustangs or any kind of fire units that do tick damage. And this is also really good when you are playing Typhoon Phoenix with high-level Phoenixes, as the maintenance array can heal up your Phoenixes against the anti-air barrage, seeing that anti-air barrage typically does not one-shot your Phoenixes. This tech can help your Phoenixes survive just a little bit longer against those annoying barrages. Another tech that you can replace the maintenance array with is the reactive armor. This technology has amazing synergy with field reassembly. Typically, the first time around, the reactive armor is going to get activated by your opponent's Fire Badgers or Mustangs. However, Let's assume the battle goes on. You clear all the chaff units, you clear all these small units in the front, and your opponent is left with DPS units such as phoenixes or fortresses, and your typhoons come back from the field reassembly tech. Now, the reactive armor is going to have amazing value against these high DPS units that shoot very slowly. So this is one way to play carry Typhoon as well. The other two techs are the Air Defense Mark, which makes your Typhoons, or makes every unit deal extra damage to the marked air units in the process. I would say for 300 supplies, this is not very worth it, as this technology can get missile intercepted, and oftentimes there's not a lot of air units that has high enough HP pool that requires your Typhoons to make them take extra damage, because I'm likely gonna play Typhoon with high level Phoenixes or Melting Point, so I don't really care about additional 30% DPS. As for field entrenchment, I think this is a very niche technology that if you find yourself in a headbutt situation, if you're playing mid-range, this can be clickable, as you want your Typhoon to be both tanky and also increase their range. So it's kind of like a weird situation where you don't want to click this tech in standard, because even though the range is nice, you kind of want them in front to utilize the 70% extra HP. I almost never click this because I like my Typhoon being very mobile and help me push into my opponent's tower in my aggro playstyle. Vulcan. Right now I'm running the classic carry Vulcan for Vulcan Marksman composition with the range enhancement, Scorching Fire, Best Partner, and Ignite. So typically when we play Vulcan Marksman, the first tech I'm looking to click is either the Scorching Fire or the range enhancement. If my opponent is pushing into me and they have like Sabertooth or Rhinos in the front line that are really close to me, I'm going to go for the Scorching Fire tech, as it allows me to not get stuck on these medium-sized units for as long, as opposed to if I go for the range enhancement, my Vulcan is very likely going to early lock on to these high HP units, essentially disabling my own chaff clear ability, causing me to lose a lot of tempo. So against medium-sized units and sledgehammers, go for the Scorching Fire first, and then you can go range the following rounds. If my opponent is pushing into me with any kind of regenerating technology or item, like Rhino with a nano repair kit, or I'm facing high level like War Factory or other like regenerating Sabertooth, then the Ignite can be a saving grace, as it disables their healing and also deals percentage based damage to these high HP units. So this is the only unit that I run Ignite on because of the current game plan of playing carry Vulcan with Marksman. Obviously, you cannot play Vulcan Marksman without a technology that allows you to summon extra Marksman to the same level as your Vulcan. This is a later tech that can give you a tremendous amount of value. If you have like 6 Vulcans on the board, you get 6 extra deployments that are high range and hopefully have other technologies already to support the DPS ability. Another way to play Vulcan, which I used to really enjoy, is to play your Vulcan as a pure support unit with what we call the War Crime setup. We have the Firebomb tech and the Sticky Oil Bomb tech. I think one of them got buffed earlier in this patch, so costing less money, allowing you to get the double tech Vulcan for a very low price. And the combination of these two is almost guaranteed to light the entire board on fire, essentially just killing everything on the ground chaff-wise. And then, as another one tech wonder or like a supporting tech, you can run a surprise armor enhancement Vulcan. Just like all the other previous units, this is for the case that you get a level 1 or even level 2 Vulcan from a unit drop, and your opponent needs a DPS check. They're just not committing to high DPS units. So you can just throw this guy down, armor enhancement for 150 at level 2. It can potentially just win you the round or even win you the game by blocking all the damage. And it doesn't feel too bad to sell out of it after, because this tech is only 150. Melting Point. This unit has one role, that is DPS. It's the best single target DPS unit in the game, good against all the Titan units, and has a lot of range, especially combined with the range enhancement. This is our go-to unit with the range enhancement against our opponent's Abyss play. Abyss has high range and enough HP pool to make most air-based DPS units have a hard time. Therefore, the melting point comes into hand. On our melting point, we also like to run the energy diffraction, aka multi-melter, to allow our melters to turn into these all-purpose kind of chaff clear unit and defensive, and can also go into aggro scenarios. This is such a fun technology, reducing our range, but allow us to lock onto 5 units at a time. This is especially powerful when your opponent is pushing into you with Wraith and Steel Balls. Oftentimes, Melting Point as a defense against that kind of composition has trouble locking onto the Wraith and finding the mark, and which is the most important thing. You have to kill your opponent's Wraith. So the multi-melter technology allows you to have a higher chance to lock onto the Wraith, and since the Wraith doesn't really have that much HP, you don't need the full damage potential from your melting point to kill it easily. So this is a phenomenal tech in that kind of defensive scenario. And once you have these two techs, you can complete the Exodia with energy absorption. This is said to be one of the most uncounterable 3-tech combo in the game, as if your melting point can even find one target out of the 5 that has a high HP pool and charges up, your melting point at level 2 or level 3 can virtually become unkillable, even in the face of a Titan, like a War Factory or Mountain, and just be phenomenal altogether. The energy absorption tech, combined with the range enhancement alone, can allow you to tank through Abyss attacks. So if you're finding that your melting point is meeting your opponent's Abyss one-on-one later at the end of the round, you might want to consider going for the absorption tech to help your melting point win that one-on-one battle. And lastly, another phenomenal tech for the melting point. I would argue this is a supporting tech that further enhances your melting point's ability with DPS. The EMP Barrage. This is going to deal tremendous damage to your opponent's energy shield. It's going to disable all ground-based units that it hits, with disable their technologies by a long time. 8 seconds is not to be laughed at. So this EMP Barrage is often clicked against your opponent's fortress with range, or your opponent's melting point in a melting point mirror matchup. In that kind of battle, it's all about who can lock on to each other first, as both the Fortress and Melting Point deal tremendous DPS, and whoever can disable your opponent's technology and disable their range is going to win out in the battle at the end. If you are somebody who doesn't like to run the multi-melter technology and you like to run standard backline melting point, then I suggest you running the crawler production, as you can create these annoying chaff units in the middle of the round when everything has died, preferably when all the chaff clear has died and you're just left with DPS units against DPS units. Sometimes one pack of the crawler production can make the difference between winning a round and losing. And lastly, armor enhancement is almost a never take on the melting point. It's not that it's a bad tech. Melting point has the same amount of HP as a Vulcan, so it can be a one tech, one round wonder, close out the game for like a DPS check. However, I think the other technologies on the melting point are just far superior to this armor enhancement. You're better off putting armor on other units for those scenarios. Fortress, one of the best giant units in the game. It's just so versatile. It's good at DPS and also has multiple supporting technologies to allow your fortress to just be these one tech wonder units that can enhance your army by a lot. The first supporting tech that allows your fortress to be a one tech wonder is the anti-air barrage. I think this is a must-have on all fortress tech loadout, as this is the best way to deal with your opponent's mass Phoenix and mass Wasp kind of army composition. This bypasses all ground chaff, all ground units, and just goes for these squishy air units. And even though it does not scale to level, it deals tremendous amount of damage per shot. And if you have like 2 or 3 fortresses, you can take down a level 1 abyss within 2 to 3 salvos of these anti-air barrages, making it pretty OP. And the best thing about it is that by killing all these high-level air units like the Phoenix and Wasp, oftentimes your fortress are going to gain a lot of levels in the process, which allows you to transition them into a effective carry unit with the range enhancement and the launcher overload. In this case, in the DPS realm, we like to run launcher overload over the double shot, because we actually kind of prefer our fortresses losing 20 meters of range after clicking the range enhancement. After losing the 20 meters of range, it's going to allow our fortresses to walk in front of our Mustangs and Fangs, allowing the fortresses to tank for these squishy light units. And I find launcher overload with fortresses 5 meters splash, same as Arclight by the way, allows your fortress to have a lower likelihood of getting stuck on chaff, as if you have lots of fortresses, you can actually chaff clear quite effectively with this technology here, doubling your attack speed. That's pretty awesome. And the last tech that I would say is also a non-negotiable, just like the anti-air barrage, is the barrier technology. Fortress being the one of the 2 units in this game that can have a barrier tech besides the hackers. This is just such a phenomenal tech. Scaling at 40,000 HP per rank allows your high level fortress, after feeding on the high level air units, to just really accelerate. The barrier tech is good against melting points, as it kind of distracts the opponent's melting points beams, especially if you have chaff units coming out of it. Essentially, it makes your opponent's melting point waste an entire full charge on the barrier before it retargets on closer units before locking onto your fortress, buying your fortress a lot of time. Use the range and launcher overload to take them down in a matchup. And barrier is just also good in the late game against any kind of spell, any kind of ground effect. So cost effective once you have a lot of fortresses on the ground. While on the topic of a carry fortress tech loadout, we cannot forget this classic loadout of double shot with elite marksman. I believe quite a few 201 players still prefer the double shot over launcher overload, as this does not decrease your fortress's range, making it a little more effective against melting points. And you pair that with the elite marksman technology, your fortress can even scale to outrange your opponent's melting point, and taking them down within just 1 to 2 shots can be very powerful. The last combo of the fortress is the Fang production and rocket punch combo. This is a classic combo in a Fang carry setup, as you want your fortresses to just be these frontline tanks with a barrier tech to start off to protect all your carry Fangs, and then you go for the rocket punch to instantly take out big chunks of chaff or medium-sized units in the process, and potentially even grabbing a lucky tower debuff in your push. And then you pair up with the additional Fang production once your Fangs have 2 to 3 technologies already equipped, then you get a tremendous amount of value. And these produced Fangs that are walking in front of the fortress can become exactly the chaff that you need to lock up your opponent's melting point later in the round. So this is a powerful, hyper-aggressive mobile beacon style of play with the fortress. And lastly, we have armor enhancement and solid shot. Armor enhancement, just like the melting point, it's not that it's a bad technology, but the fortress just has so many good technologies that are unique to this unit that it would be really hard to not have this anti-air barrage over armor enhancement, especially when several other units already have armor enhancement available. And regarding solid shot, I'm just going to declare this as the worst technology in the game. Don't even ever click it. By increasing your attack interval and decreasing your splash, you're just asking your fortress to get stuck on things for the rest of the game, because usually you're not going to have enough money and deployments to support your chaff clear. And even if you do have enough chaff clear, I just don't think the 60-meter range is worth it when you can just go for a 40-meter range while maintaining the attack interval and splash. Just pair it with the other DPS technologies like launcher or double shot. So that is my conclusion on this trash technology. Sandworm, a very tanky giant unit that has a lot of unique technologies. I like to use a Sandworm for a super strong frontline tank with the armor enhancement. If my opponent is heavy into fire units or Mustangs, then I like to click this tech, have my Sandworms come in kind of covering the entire board in a wide fashion, and just kind of make those fire units lock onto them indefinitely. And combining the armor enhancement with burrow maintenance, your Sandworms can just become these unkillable giant units later in the game to close out the game by dealing 350 HP per unit. So burrow maintenance is something I really enjoy clicking if my opponent doesn't have any significant burst damage. Like if they don't have a mountain, if they don't have steel balls or melting point, this technology for only 150 supplies can give you a lot of value. If you ever find yourself playing against melting point while you're playing Sandworm, then you want to have either a replicate technology or mechanical division. The extra larva that gets spawned every time the Sandworm burrows down and burrows up from the ground, it gets spawned in front of your Sandworm, meaning that it's always going to kind of tank and lure the targeting from the steel balls and the melting point. And hopefully this one larva buys you enough time to chaff clear and kill everything in front of your Sandworm to burrow down again to avoid being targeted. This is especially powerful if you create a death ball of Sandworms, maybe putting like 4 to 6 Sandworms in a hexagon and beaconing them all into the one place. Then you're going to find your Sandworms are going to do a lot of burrowing up and re-burrowing again because of their attack splash, and they're just clearing everything in front of them so quickly. So this is a phenomenal tech to pair up with your Sandworm against steel balls and melting point. Another tech I really enjoy having is the 100 cost strike technology. This increases your first attack by 10 meters, so giving you 22 meters of splash. That's the largest splash in this entire game by one single attack. And this is going to synergize with your replicate tech because every time one Sandworm comes up and kills an entire horde of army in front of you, the following Sandworms are going to burrow up and then quickly burrow down again, giving you tons of larvas in the process to just further distract the melting points. It can be a very good synergy. Another common technology on the Sandworm to replace the armor enhancement is the Mech Rage. This is especially popular in 2v2, but even in 1v1, if you are going for a horde of Sandworms just all over the map, increasing their movement speed and decreasing attack interval can achieve similar things as the strike by clearing the units around the Sandworms faster. You get more value out of the replicate. You can start to see the synergy here. For a while, in standard matchups, Sandworm was the best standard giant unit to counter Arclight carry or Vulcan carry because of the armor enhancement and also because of the cheap mechanical division technologies. Another way to play your Sandworm is to turn it into a full-on supporting unit. Just kind of become this super giant chaff unit with both replicate and mechanical division. The mechanical div tech gives you 4 lavas upon death per Sandworm. Combining that with the replicate, you can end up creating tons and tons of these small larvas that can distract your opponent's melting point and single target DPS units. And with the Sandworms being so difficult to kill in the first place, the combination of these two techs can just create a lot of ground-based trouble to distract your opponent while you can chaff clear and do the DPS. And lastly, a old school tech, the Sandstorm. The Sandstorm Worm with Wasp was a classic composition popularized by Rooster. This decreases the damage taken inside of this Sandstorm and also reduces the range of your opponent's range units in the Sandstorm. Used to be very effective when it lasted a long time, but now that it only lasts for 7 seconds, And with the introduction of the mountain as a hard counter against sandworms, I just don't find this tech having any value compared to the other phenomenal techs like a strike or field maintenance or burrow maintenance. And the last technology that we didn't talk about is the anti-air sandworm technology. At only 100 cost, you get an extra 20 meters of range, turning your sandworms not from a melee unit to a 20-meter range attacking unit and allowing you to target air. This used to be kinda good when Sandworm carry in standard was a thing, because you can kinda have this unit just like scale out of control and do everything. But just like the other giant units, with this many amazing technologies that can really amplify the effectiveness of the Sandworm, I find changing the role of the Sandworm is just not worth the additional technology slot. Raiden, this is our pure DPS giant, amazing at dealing against sledgehammers, steel balls, phantom rays, and honestly everything once you get some levels. So to make this unit a carry DPS, you have to run the range enhancement, as it keeps it further back behind your chaff clear unit, oftentimes Arclights or Tarantulas, and then allows them to gain levels. And most importantly, besides keeping the unit safe, it also allows you to prioritize target important units once your chaff clear units do the job at clearing the front wave of chaff. Oftentimes with range enhancement, you can like early snipe down your opponent's DPS units just by the way the Raiden targets. Once you go for the range enhancement, the second tech that makes the Raidens an absolute monster at carrying the game is the chain technology. Even though it decreases the Raiden's range by 20 meters, it's going to allow you to effectively have 60 meters extra range for your Raiden because of the radius of the chain lightning and hitting additional units. So by clicking the chain, you go from targeting 3 units to targeting 6 units at once. And oftentimes, this can lead to your Raidens killing backline marksmen or backline phoenixes in the process. So this is definitely one of my favorite techs after going for the range enhancement, and just makes late game Raidens able to clear chaff. And if you have like 5 or 6 of them in a row, not even shielded Wasp or shielded Fangs and slow down the Raidens. You just end up clearing everything super fast, even with chaff. The other 2 supporting techs for the Raiden are phenomenal. We have a EMP shot. So with Raiden being really afraid of Melting Point and Overlord and other Raidens, having the ability to have 3 to 6 shots that can target your opponent's key units and apply EMP allows your Raiden to win these late battle, like late round battles, by just shutting down their range. So even if you don't have enough DPS to kill your opponent's melting points within 1 to 2 shots, by just slowing them down, shutting down their range, you can usually take your time and gun down your opponent's carry units in return. So this is such a key technology on your Raiden. And the last tech that we run is the ionization. This is a phenomenally cheap technology that's oftentimes a one-tech wonder that allows us to deal with your opponent's Titan units or tanky giants. Say your opponent is pushing into you with tons of sandworms or mountains. You have some DPS on the ground or in the air, but you're just lacking that giant DPS. Then going for the one tech on the Raiden off a unit drop can sometimes allow you to instantly shave down your opponent's Titan units by like 50 to even like 75% HP just within 1 to 2 shots. So it's incredibly powerful tech that allows your Raiden to have this extra utility other than just going for a carry tech. The other techs that people often run besides the chain is the Fork Lightning. Fork Lightning decreases the range by only 10 meters and allows you to hit 5 units at once, kind of going for a spread. I think this is a inferior tech compared to the chain because even though you only decrease by 10 meters, it's more expensive. And instead of hitting 6 units with the chain, we're hitting 5 units only. And it does not have the ability to bounce at a random rate to get tower debuff or to hit backline units, which is the most powerful aspect of the chain technology. So I truly believe running chain over fork is the key. And I don't think you should ever run both on the same bar because the odds of you clicking both is very unlikely. And you miss out on this amazing tech on the side. And the last tech that the Raiden got in a fairly recent patch is the energy shield, allowing your Raiden to generate a energy shield on its own by absorbing the damage dealt equal to your opponent's unit's HP. This in theory is phenomenal. However, with Raiden's being so much of a range unit, always staying in the back line, and having these very crucial technologies to allow it to full carry you in a game, I just don't think the energy shield is remotely worth it. As you can tell, I haven't even unlocked it yet. Just don't ever see. I don't want to turn my DPS unit into this tanky unit. Not even with fortified, like heavy, like the variant card that turns your Raiden into a tank. That I just don't think that's worth it. So that's our carry Raiden tech. Overlord, aka Boat, this gigantic aircraft unit can be equipped with two different sets of tech bars. The first tech bar is what we have here. This is a hyper aggressive on the line boat tech bar that is really good at playing with fire badgers or typhoons right on the line. The idea is that you always go for the Overlord artillery, aka chin gun, to allow your overlords to have these instant target, sudden, like instant death and attack, erasing everything in the front line, allowing you to grab a tower debuff very early on in the game with a nice mobile beacon. Once you have this technology clicked and you create a death bolt of your overlord, your opponent is going to react to your overlords in one or two ways. They're going to go into Mustangs, or they're going to go into either like Phoenix, Melting Point, or Marksman. So these singular target units. That's when you surprise them with a mothership tech by producing extra Wasp every 32 seconds, especially in the beginning of the round, to create these fast-moving air chaff that can distract these singular target DPS units away from your boats, allowing you to get tower debuff and erase everything in sight. So having these two techs makes this tech bar a very aggressive setup. And because you are playing your overlords in a death ball concentrated on one side, you are vulnerable to spells such as a nuke, EMP blast, or even like ion beam. Therefore, having the jump drive tech, even though it's very expensive, allows you to move like 5 to 6 boats at once. So you're thinking about moving 3,000 to 5,000 supplies worth of units freely around the map can allow you to jump drive away from a spell and make your opponent waste that economy, and also allow you to take the other tower that potentially has not been leveled. So this is the power of the jump drive. And then lastly, the supporting tech of photon emission on the Overlord. I believe this is a must-have on every Overlord setup, because Overlords are expensive to get into. You're not going to find yourself playing like a carry Overlord or this aggro Overlord tech bar too much. To get into 1 to 2 techs is very expensive. However, having the ability to have a boat later in the game from a unit drop that allows you to get photon emission on all your units, including airborne units. So if you have carry Wraith, carry Raidens that are on the line that are vulnerable to EMP, it gives you the option to just click this one tech wonder, making the Overlord this amazing support unit that also deals phenomenal DPS just on their own without any techs. Okay, let's show you the other tech, which we usually call carry boat, which goes kind of built around a range enhancement and launcher overload, allowing your boats to shoot twice as fast at a penalty of a 20 meters decrease in range. Oftentimes, people will wait and build their boats. They'll build enough boats across the board, having like 3 to 5 of them, before double clicking these two technologies to instantly give your boats a massive power boost. And this is especially powerful combo when you have the improved Overlord card, increasing your splash damage by like 5 meters or something. However, if you were to choose one tech at a time because you want to scale and you're looking for tempo, I recommend range if you're ever in like a mid-range, long-range battle. However, launcher overload is also clickable as a first tech if you ever find yourself in a headbutt scenario where your opponent's units are just rushing into you. As for the third tech for your carry boat, this is widely debated. It's either between a high explosive ammo, HE ammo, allowing your overlords to also chaff clear and clear medium-sized units really effectively, only at a penalty of 40% attack power. The idea behind this tech and the argument behind this is that your overlord at level 2, even with a 40% attack decrease, is going to be able to kill most giants and even titan units with no problem. And if your boats are stuck on chaff anyway, and they're not dealing any DPS, so allowing your boats to also help you with chaff clear means that you can lock on to the key units earlier in the round and potentially having some crazy splash to just kind of like kill supporting units that you don't even mean to target at. This is a phenomenal tech when you pair it with the improved boat card. The other argument is for the mothership technology. Once again, the idea is that if you're playing carry boat, you most likely have 4 to 6 boats across the whole map, and they're staying back because of the range technology, meaning that you're likely going to have 2 rounds, maybe even 3 rounds of production from this mothership tech as the round goes on for a little bit longer. And that gives you a lot of free anti-air and just air chaff. And you can even tech the shield, portable shield tech on the Wasps to make them even more annoying. One thing I forgot to mention about the mothership tech that you might not know is that it gets influenced by any kind of Wasp variance card. Meaning if you take mass-produced Wasp already, the Wasp you produce from the mothership are going to be weaker, and vice versa. If you take an improved Wasp card, then the mothership is going to produce improved Wasp for you at the same cost, so making it very efficient. The other two armor enhancement and field maintenance technologies are phenomenal if you're looking to meme or troll your opponent with these really tanky air units. However, with a base HP of only 21,000 and all these amazing technologies that just defines the Overlord for you, I feel like these two technologies, the field maintenance and armor, are not even remotely worth the cost. Maybe you can make an argument of having one of them on your bar if you don't like having, say, mothership or jump drive, just to have the opportunity to maybe go for like a one round wonder. But I truly have never seen these two technologies clicked at the high MMR. War Factory, one of the best Titan units in this game here, as we have production technologies as well as carry DPS technology, and even some chaff clear technology, and lastly a supporting technology. So this unit can truly do it all if you have the right tech bar and if you have enough money to support it. Let's start with why our setup is like this. We are running a hybrid War Factory. We are neither running a full production with the triple production, nor are we going for a pure brawler tech for maximal HP and maximal durability. We're choosing to run this kind of tech because we like to be versatile. We like to have the ability to play production. Therefore, we choose two of the three best production techs on the War Factory. In my opinion, the Steel Bow production is superior than the Sledgehammer production. Even though it produces slower, the Steel Bows have the ability to have either armor or mechanical division, making these production units really tanky, or they can produce extra chaff for you, especially powerful in the later round where everything is dead. And the movement speed of the Steel Bow allows them to separate from the War Factory, essentially allowing them to not have your War Factory die in any kind of splash effect. Versus if you have Sledgehammers, you're still vulnerable to your opponent's Scorpions or Stormcallers or other kind of splashing damage. And then Phoenix production, I believe, is a must on your production War Factory line because it's the only way for you to produce a lot of anti-air units that can also apply EMP to your opponent's units. So the Phoenix has EMP or the quantum reassembly. Let's see the synergy that we're trying to build here with our production units. We can easily just go for quantum reassembly, sell out of our Phoenix, go for the Phoenix production, and now we have these Phoenixes that just come back to life once throughout the game. So these are our two production tech choices. And then from here, we run the range and launcher overload. The range technology on your War Factory is especially important if you ever find yourself in a standard matchup against your opponent's own War Factory or your opponent's Vulcans or even fortresses. This allows you to stand toe-to-toe against those giant units, and it's even good against mountains, as you have 140 meters of range and you have 4 different guns. And that's the other thing that makes the range enhancement more powerful, is that, as you may or may not know, the War Factory has 2 guns in the front and 2 guns in the back. And then they each have their own attack radius of 100 meters. However, So most of the times, your War Factory is only activating the 2 front guns to chaff clear and to kill stuff. Unless units walk into the back gun's range, then they'll activate it. With the range enhancement, it allows your back guns to reach further forward, oftentimes doubling your ability to chaff clear and to deal damage. So this is a very powerful tech in any kind of defensive scenario. Once you have the range enhancement activated, you can go for either one of the 2 routes. You can go for full DPS. Let's say your chaff clear is already covered, and you're trying to rush into your opponent's War Factory head on, or your opponent's mountains. You can go for the launcher overload, doubling your attack interval while only decreasing the range by 20 meters. So if you don't think range is an issue and you just want more DPS, go for this tech. And sometimes it can even allow you to kill your opponent's melting point before they can fully charge up on you. The other tech, which is one of my favorite techs on the War Factory after going for the range, is the HE ammo, turning our splash from 4.5 to 11.5 meters, turning our War Factory into this do-it-all machine that can chaff clear very effectively with the 4 different guns activated. And once your chaff clear is done, even with a 40% attack decrease, you can still gun down your opponent's Titan units or Giant units with no issue whatsoever. So this is in my opinion, one of my favorite and best techs on the War Factory. And the last tech for a War Factory supporting tech, we like to run the Missile Interceptor as a 1 tech wonder, just in case our opponent goes heavy into Phantom Rays or Hound Fire or the newly buffed Stormcallers with their new techs. The Missile Interceptor tech costs 350, and it's the equivalent of 4 Missile Interceptor devices on 1 unit, meaning you're getting 400 supplies worth of value per unit, and you can just drop down 2 War Factories against your opponent. Then they're forced to click the heavy missile tech or to transition out of their missile units. It's very powerful against carry Overlord unit compositions, as well as the missile interceptors eventually can just erase all your opponent's DPS, and then you can go for a Phoenix production to just kill the remaining Overlords in the air. Another way that most people like to play the War Factory is to swap out the launcher overload, kind of still having the benefit of range and HE, but now you have another production technology to click. And oftentimes these players will go for triple production and to just overwhelm your opponent's army. The Sledgehammer production is especially powerful against your opponent's melting point, as the production speed, 6.6 seconds, is almost exactly perfect against a singular melting point. A melting point would lock onto your Sledgehammer, take the time to charge up, and by the time the melting point kills the Sledgehammer, you're likely going to have another Sledgehammer produced right in front of you. So this is a very cost-efficient tech, but I've said earlier why I didn't like it. The other tech that used to be very, very popular was the armor enhancement, as not because we're trying to block out the additional 60 damage per tick, but it's for the 50% HP buff on this Titan unit that already has almost 120,000 HP at level 1. So if you find yourself in a situation where your opponent has no true DPS on the board and you're looking to close out the game within 500 HP player damage, you can easily just elite recruit a level 2 War Factory, slap on the armor enhancement, put it right on the line, and then your opponent, everything from your opponent is going to be stuck on this War Factory for pretty much the entire round, granting you a guaranteed victory. So this used to be a very popular way to play the Gut Punch War Factory in the corner. However, with the current meta having so many powerful DPS units, especially with the mountains, if you don't end up winning the game from this tech, you're likely going to be in deep trouble. Therefore, you have to weigh out, is the risk worth the reward? And last technology on the War Factory is photon coating. 30-second photon coating, just like the Rhino. I've explained to you why I don't think this is worth it, because all of the other techs are amazing. All these are S tier techs on the War Factory. And I wouldn't want to have a tech taking up a free spot when I can just easily put my Farseer next to my War Factory, granting it a similar effect for 25 seconds. So I don't recommend having this tech just because the other techs are so amazing and they truly define your War Factory, making it the unit it is, rather than this kind of generic tech. Abyss, a DPS powerhouse flying titan that is phenomenal in dealing with your opponent's War Factory or mountain. I basically only ever play Abyss against my opponent's War Factory, mountains, and sometimes Vortex spamming. Explain why. The techs that we like to run on the Abyss that are absolutely S tier, number one is the Swarm Missile technology, as this allows you to have this form of chaff clear every 15 seconds, just gunning down these stationary, medium-sized, or small units. Oftentimes, it allows you to snipe down backline marksmen and backline Mustangs with ease, while you can focus on the frontline tank units with the Abyss laser attack. And this technology, in the right setup, if your opponent doesn't have anything in front of their level 1 tower, you can grab an instant power debuff in the beginning of the battle, oftentimes just winning you the entire game outright because of this cheesy interaction. It's a phenomenal tech for 500 supplies and such a good support for this unit. The other technology that I find is phenomenal for a one-tech wonder, making the Abyss super powerful against other ground-based titans, is the disintegration technology, aka FART. This allows us to slow down all the ground units around us in a huge radius, and then causing 20% of HP damage every 15 seconds. So the combination of the slowing down effect and then this chunk-based HP damage allows you to clump up your opponent's units a little bit more, increasing the chance of your Abyss attack hitting the key targets, such as the War Factories or mountains or even fortresses. So this oftentimes is one of my first or second tech when playing against other Titan units. Another reason the disintegration tech is so powerful is that it is really amazing at dealing with your opponent's mirror image vortexes. Oftentimes against spamming crab players where they have like 10 crabs in a row with the mirror image technology, the extra mirror images are acting as additional chaff clear and additional DPS, and they're so hard to deal with because they're just in the back line. However, if you click this technology right on the line, it's going to instantly erase every single one of those mirror vortexes, making it a very efficient trade, and you still have these Abyss that swipe horizontally, which is amazing against the Vortexes. The next technology that we're going to highlight is the unlikely hero of wreckage recycling. For only 200 supplies, we get more damage, and you also restore HP equal to your enemy's HP, which makes the Abyss very, very tanky and survivable against like medium DPS units like Phoenixes, or in a lot of cases against the Mass Fortress. This is the best technology to click. If your opponent commits into a bunch of fortresses right on the line or in an aggressive scenario, and they have no other anti-air DPS, and they're relying on these anti-air barrage missiles to do the damage, then all you have to do is slap down a level 2 Abyss right on the line, going for the wreckage recycling, so at a very cheap cost. It'll allow your Abyss to tank all the anti-air barrage salvos while keeping its HP full almost the entire round, especially for every fortress they kill. They basically just kind of restore the HP back to full. So this is sometimes used as a gut shot to close out the game against your opponent's mass fortress setup. And you have probably seen some of my games where I use this to close out the game. Okay, another situational tech, the vertical sweep. This gives you extra damage, but now your laser beam swipes vertically. This, in theory, makes the Abyss worse at chaff clearing and makes you stuck at things more. However, the scenario where you want this tech is when your opponent has production war factory, meaning that your opponent's war factory is producing a bunch of sledgehammers or steel balls right in front of the war factory, causing your horizontal beams to never hit them. However, if you swap into this vertical sweep with the extra damage buff, you're going to end up just hitting your opponent's war factories every time they summon and produce these units, oftentimes 1 to 2 shotting the war factory in the process, making it really effective. In some scenarios, you can even use the vertical sweep to get an instant tower debuff if your opponent positions in a particular way. Alright, some people argue the Dark Companion tech is S tier because for only 300 supplies, you get to summon a unit that also costs 300 supplies, meaning it's very deployment efficient, and if you have more than 2 Abyss, you're getting insane amount of value. And not only is the value good, but the unit you summon is one of the best chaff clear units in the game. So a playstyle is to use to double tech or triple tech your Wraith with range, HE, 8-gun, or even combining with ground spec to summon these amazing chaff clear units to support your Abyss in a long drawn out battle. If you're going for a long range battle, the range enhancement oftentimes is considered just as good as the disintegration tech at dealing with your opponent's war factories or mountains, not because you are fearing your Abyss moving forward too far and getting gunned down, but because your Abyss moves so slowly that oftentimes if you finally clear the chaff in front of your opponent's Titans, you want your Abyss to be able to lock on to the Titans right away, instead of moving forward, wasting time, and then miss that lock-on opportunity. Therefore, I believe this is the best Abyss loadout, in my opinion, for my playstyle. For the photon coating, it's the same reason for the Rhino, same reason for the War Factory, as to why we don't use it. Because the other techs are just more important, and oftentimes my Abyss is pretty safe in the back, so I'm not too afraid of EMP, as the effects can more likely wear out throughout the battle. And that's all the technologies that the Abyss has. Mountain, a super DPS tanky Titan unit that is amazing at killing fortresses, war factories, rhinos, and basically anything on the ground. And with the anti-aircraft ammunition, the Mountain can even rival your opponent's Abyss or Overlord in the process. So let's go into our tech bar. We favor the range enhancement on the Mountain because oftentimes we're grabbing the Mountain against our opponent's carry fortress or war factory, both of which have 140 meters of range, meaning that if we want to rival their range, we need to have this tech available. Same thing, we just want this unit to be able to lock on to the key units earlier in the round instead of having to walk slowly forward to find their target. The other tech that supports a carry DPS Mountain is the gun-launched missile, aka Super Fist. This allows you to launch a very high radius, 15-meter radius rocket at your opponent every 14 seconds. This is especially powerful if your opponent has a lot of sledgehammers, void eyes, and just things clumping up near the tower. Oftentimes this can just snipe down a tower, help you chaff clear, and even help you kill some long range melting points in the process, because the rocket has a range of 180, which severely outranges most units in this game. So it's a very powerful scaling tech whenever you go for 2 to 4 mountains on the board against your opponent's ground-based units. If you're ever finding yourself against mass melting points in a long drawn-out mountain game, the smoke bomb can be one of your best friends, as you shoot out these smoke bombs at your opponent's army, and the odds are you're going to land some smoke near the melting point, leading them to lose their range by 35%, meaning now your mountains can outrange your opponent's melting point, and with their super high power DPS, they can gun down any level of melting point before they can even find the target, making this a phenomenal second or third tech in a long-range standard mountain game. The mountain plating on the Mountain is almost a must, as this provides you a phenomenal gut punch against your opponent's tick damage units. And this is way better than armor enhancement, as it blocks out 700 damage per tick and increases by 700 per rank, meaning a level 2 mountain soaks up 1400 damage per shot. Meaning that even if your opponent has carry tarantulas, they're not going to make a dent against your level 1 or level 2 mountain. Oftentimes, if your opponent is down to below 1000, below 500 HP, you can think about attempting this play, close out the game. But just make sure that you know the risk and reward. If you invest this much into the mountain and not win the game right away, then your mountain is vulnerable to the melting point instant locking onto it, because it's likely right on the line, unless you want to sell it and reposition it in the back with range enhancement. Okay, so we talked about anti-aircraft ammunition decreases the attack by 40%, however, allows you to shoot air. And most of the air units really don't have that much HP to begin with, meaning that even with a 40% debuff or 40% nerf to the attack, your mountains at level 1, level 2 are still going to have a fantastic time taking down Abyss, Raidens or Overlords in the process. No problem. So having this on hand allows you to play a full carry mountain game. And lastly, Photon Loop. This is such a overpowered technology when you are playing like a frontline mountain. So this is different than photon coating. This allows your mountain to get a 25-second photon coating every 30 seconds, meaning you go 25 seconds of photon coating, you have 5 seconds of cooldown, and then you get photon coating again. And so your opponent has to find a way to hit you with EMP, acid, ignite during that 5 seconds. Well, mostly EMP during that 5-second window. Otherwise, you regain the photon coating again, making you immune to all these annoying effects. I just find this so powerful if you're amassing tons of mountains and your opponent's trying to shut it down with like EMP, for example. The other two techs of the mountains is saturation bombardment and ER ammo. I call this mountain mode. Mountain mode, in my opinion, is entirely playable. I would maybe swap it out with Photon Loop, because if you want to play this tech, you know your mountains are staying all the way back. And this is a phenomenal tech against your opponent's melting point and just medium-sized units. Say your opponent plays mass sledgehammers into you. The 75% damage nerf is totally fine, because the mountains still do so much damage at clearing these medium-sized units. It doesn't really matter, and it's going to stay all the way back and potentially giving you an early tower debuff. While on the other hand, saturation bombardment is a pretty low tier tech in my opinion, as even though it increases your attack splash by 3 meters, and you're going for this like pretty much like a burst mode mountain attack, I just find it kind of takes away the mountain's true strength, which is having I think it's 4 different guns constantly shooting at different things, and its attack speed is actually quite fast in that regard. So you're taking away the attack speed for a little bit more range, and oftentimes when you're bursting things down, there's not enough things on the ground for the value, and just way too expensive. Therefore, I don't think you should ever run this tech in a one-on-one. And that concludes our unit technology guide for today. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you comment down below if I missed anything, or if you want to share your favorite unit technology setup with everybody else. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time.